Let's call this meeting of the Board of Education. Is that working, Aaron? To order, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Always a good way to start a meeting. Can I get a motion for the consent agenda? Thank you, Ms. Costin. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Downey. Okay, all in favor of the consent agenda? That passes 8-0. Okay, we are now to the election of our officers. We do this annually. I suspect that's why Leslie Yeager is sitting in front of me. No, probably not. So there's a very specific order to this, and I have my rules, so I will follow that. And this is how it starts. We will be electing officers in accordance with policy 9121. Again, we do this annually. We will go in order. And the first thing we'll do, and I'll explain it to everyone as we go along, but the first one is for chair. So I'm going to open the nominations for chair, and I'm actually going to make the first nomination for Ms. Downey. And since I'm nominating, which doesn't, if you want to give her a second, that's fine, although it's not required under Robert's rules, but if you'd like it to, that's a second for Ms. Costin. Okay, so I was the first because I nominated her. So, and as a result, I get to do the speech now. No, that goes next. I have my order, don't worry. After 5 years on the board with 3 years in leadership, it's time for me to hang the reins to others. And I do so with a sense of gratitude for the opportunity to serve the community and optimism for the future of our school system. We have accomplished much in the last few years with the hiring of Dr. Jones, navigating COVID, investments in our schools and security, and of course, many academic, art, music, and athletic accomplishments. Some have asked me why I'm not seeking the chair. And while I have been honored with the trust of the community and my colleagues, I believe it's important to encourage new people to step forward. As an investor and an executive myself, I believe that a board should develop and sustain a strong team. We have a great talent on our board today, and I hope we'll continue to attract wise and thoughtful people to the board over time. It is time to pass the baton, and I look forward to supporting the new leadership. With that, I would like to nominate Christina, who I believe will be a thoughtful and very effective chair. Her resume is long, both professionally and as a community leader. Ms. Downey's continuous commitment to our schools and students has spanned 23 years. All 3 of her children attended our schools K through 12, but her volunteerism began in 1999 when her oldest child started in the Greenwich Public Schools. During that time, she served as president and served on the board of the Riverside PTA and the Greenwich High School PTA. She's also sat on the executive board of PTA Council as PTAC treasurer. Her multitude of experiences and dedication to our schools are impressive. And in fact, I always call Christina for advice when it comes to my own children. During her time as a member of the Board of Education, she served on nearly every committee on the board, including negotiations and the chairing of both the budget and policy governance committees. Christina has also served and continues to serve on 2 building committees. That experience will be invaluable, as a large focus this coming year will be the building of Central Middle School. Equally important, Christina has forged connections with many community partners and has also been the board liaison for Greenwich Alliance for Education. However, her broader relationship with the town bodies and community are just as valuable. She served on the RTM and, no surprise, was on the Education Committee. She also has fostered good working relationships with members of the BET and other community partners. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have a continual communication with the other town bodies. She also has broader community involvement, having served on the board of the Junior League and the Riverside Association. You almost need a water for this, I know. I'm done now. Christina is quite accomplished professionally with both an MBA and a law degree, and her deep understanding of policy, procedures, and finance will serve her well, as I hope the next chair of our board. So now I will ask if there are any other nominations. Cody, who would you like to nominate?
Joe.
And anyone, you don't have to have a second, but would anyone like to second since we did that? Michael Joseph, okay. Would you like to give a speech?
Honestly, after your speech, not really. It's a tough act to follow. I'll just say a few things. I think Joe is, first of all, I agree with everything you said about Christina. She's great, so I don't want this to be like a, my nominee is better than yours, but just putting in a few comments on Joe. I think Joe's obviously a pillar of our community. Working with him the last year, constantly ask myself, why does this guy do all of this stuff? Because so much of it is painful and it's very selfless. Joe strikes me as kind of a maverick. He's nonpartisan in the good way, and he's really a kind of a team builder, community oriented person. He's obviously a successful business person. I think he has a great sense of independence and an eye towards healthy governance. I think he's really devoted to the town and the schools, and is someone who can be an effective leader for us all. So that's why he's my candidate.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for chair? Okay, seeing none, this is now what we're going to do. We're going to record your vote on these pads, so I know it's your vote, okay? You're gonna write down who you want for chair, and would you please put chair, because then we have to turn this into the town clerk, and we'll do this for the next few officer spots. And then hand them all to me. Okay, and then I'm gonna say it and record as I go. So, for Joe, Cody Kittle for Joe. Okay. Michael Joseph for Joe. Karen Hirsch for Christina Downey. Kathleen Stowe for Christina Downey. Karen Kowalski for Joe. Christina Downey for Christina Downey. Laura Costin for Christina Downey. And Joe Kelly for Joe Kelly. So I guess my speech was for naught because I remain chair, and therefore at this time. And I guess, I'm getting good at this. No, I'm kidding. So as a result, we will not go to any of the next positions because you don't do anything until you actually have a chair. So,
Point of order?
Yeah.
Can we call for a revote?
yeah, you can.
So in the spirit of bipartisanship, since we now know it's 4-4, and we know that if it goes a month, that this goes to First Selectman Camillo, and I think we know that where he's going to lie. I'd like to call for a revote to reconsider, so we can, in the hopes that we can move forward as a board, electing a new chair.
I see no need to do that at this time. We have 30 days, and if we choose to caucus separately, we can, but I see no need to do that at this time. And since I'm sole chair, does anyone disagree with that? We can take it over. No? Okay, so I'm going to move to the next agenda item.
Can I move to vote on a revote?
Not really. So, unless you're planning to change your vote, so. Okay, so in that case, then let's move forward and we have a healthy agenda. So I'm not sure, GH student government, you guys are up next and I want to hear what you have to say. Perhaps you can provide us some wisdom.
Good evening, everyone, and to the board and meeting attendees. My name is Mitch Goldstein, and I am the Student Body Vice President. Earlier this month, Isabella Cici, our Chair of Lunch Services, and I met with Mr. Nanarello and Chef Nico Saragias to discuss ways to improve lunch line efficiency. Specifically, we discussed the opening of the Snack Shack, which allows students to buy snacks without physically entering the relatively small cafeteria. The Snack Shack is also where students can buy smoothies, which have been widely popular this year. As we continue the year, I look forward to seeing how else our Chair of Lunch Services can work with Chef Nico and Mr. Nanarello to improve efficiency and our food. Regarding food, Isabella and I have continued to work with the administration to address the student center trash crisis. Despite trash cans being placed literally everywhere, students still need to pay more attention to throwing out their trash. After brainstorming ways to improve waste disposal that range from reminder emails to choral performances, we decided that a quick and friendly way would be to play the cleanup song during lunch. And yes, this is the same song that your kindergarten teacher played back in elementary school. While I'm happy to say that it was effective, the effects were temporary. So in the future, our efforts to get students to throw out their trash will likely be more formal. At this point in the year, I'm excited to announce that all 8 of our subcommittees have been established and chairs have been selected. Tomorrow will be our first mass meeting with the formally set up committees, and I'm eager to hear the ideas that our class representatives have come up to better our school. As we continue the year, subcommittee chairs are expected to hold 1 forum a month. These meetings are welcome to all so that all students can voice their concerns. Earlier in the month, Isabella and I met with the PTA co-presidents where we discussed ways that the PTA can get more involved with the students. Specifically, we think that student government can be used to strengthen communication with the student body about the PTA outreach program, so that all students are knowledgeable about the resources available to them, especially regarding financial aid. On behalf of the student body, I want to thank you all for your time, and I look forward to continuing to work with the board over the next month. I now pass the microphone over to Student Body President Isabella Gega.
Thank you.
I broke it, sorry. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Jones, members of the board, and meeting attendees. I am Isabella Gega, the student body president at Greenwich High School. As we roll into Thanksgiving, we pay homage to our school, our friends, our family, and our community. As we are thankful for the food on our table, we are also thankful for the community that is able to support us. During the season of gratitude, Greenwich High School has concluded our Thanksgiving food drive this week. Distribution to more than 100 families will begin Monday the 21st to prepare for the glorious 4th Thursday of November. And on the theme of Thanksgiving food, the senior class has raised more than $2,000 during their fall-themed pie fundraiser. This money will go towards decreasing the cost of prom tickets and other senior-related events as we swing into the second quarter. In addition, the sophomore class had their Krispy Kreme fundraiser, which was a success, and we look forward to participating in the junior class badminton tournament on November 22nd. Beyond this, each class is actively searching for ways to increase class event participation through fun activities that promote school unity. With the upcoming holiday season, we are pleased that November 1st college application deadline has finally passed. November 2nd was a day of absolute bliss for seniors. Thank you to the teachers, administrators, school counselors, and everyone involved in the process. Our success is due to your support. Quick shout out to Jamie Smith and Yuna Nomoto, the senior class president and vice president, for the kind words as the seniors work towards their next deadline and their future. The senior class is excited to brainstorm community events to engage the class of 2023 for the rest of the year. And finally, this past Monday, congrats to the 250 students who were inducted into our school's National Honor Society program for their esteemed work within our high school community. These students truly encapsulate the essence of our school due to their hard work and perseverance. I am proud to say that November has been a great month thus far. As always, I'm excited for the future, and I look forward to speaking with you all once again in December. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, next up, let me get my agenda. I assume it's from, is it Francis? GEA. Okay, let's have GEA. GEA is next.
Didn't hear you, sorry. Good evening, all. My name is Elaine Perone, President of the Greenwich Education Association. Just scroll back down. Hey, here we are. All right, so November is traditionally time to be reflective and give thanks. I would like to recognize and give thanks Thank you to our Board of Ed members who are volunteers and give their time to help make GPS schools great for all. Thank you. Thank you to the Board of Ed negotiations team for all their hard work in negotiating a fair contract. Thank you to our parents who support our schools and teachers and who volunteer, fundraise, and do whatever it takes. Thank you for that. Thank you to our students who are also amazing and will become our future leaders, problem solvers, inventors, or whoever they want to be. Thank you to all our essential workers who keep us safe, keep our schools and grounds clean. Thank you to the BET, RTM, and hopes that you will support and fully fund Dr. Jones' budget. We still have much work to do, and many people will be thankful to have a new Central Middle School, Western Fields, and a new GHS entryway. Just in case you're not aware of it, it's American Education Week. This is celebrated the week prior to the week of Thanksgiving, which is this week. This presents everyone with an opportunity to celebrate public education and honor the individuals who are making a difference in ensuring that every student receives a quality education. I'd like to take that opportunity now to thank my fellow teachers. Bob Talbert, teaching kids to count is fine, but teaching kids what count is best. Thank our Greenwich teachers for not only teaching our GPS curriculum and 21st century skills, but also the importance of modeling the love of teaching, kindness, compassion that we show every day in our classroom is oh so important. It helps our students see the kind of people they can grow up to be. Teachers are those who help find strengths, wipe tears away, overpower demons, and conquer fears. Sometimes our students can spend more time with us than they do with their families, which makes our jobs oh such important roles in their lives. Thank you for being there for our students. Teachers who love teaching teach children to love learning. Thank you for bringing passion and exciting into your classroom, teachers. My teacher gave me the best gift of all, believing in me. I want to thank all my teachers when I first came to Greenwich, my administrators for believing in me, and Greenwich for providing such opportunities. It is a good place to work. Thank you. Thank you to my teachers for being the professionals that you are, who are trained to give all students the critical thinking skills they need to navigate the world, making our classrooms a safe haven where students learn about the world in an honest, truthful, age-accessible, fact-based curriculum, even if some of those lessons are difficult and uncomfortable. I'd like to end with a quote that I have as a footer in all my emails, and I truly believe this. If you can change a classroom, you can change a community. And if you can change a community, you can change the world. I'm thankful. Thank you and have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have PTA Council, Francis.
Good evening. I'm Frances Unobe, mom of 3 GPS kids and the 2022-2023 president of the Parent Teacher Advisory Council Greenwich. PTAC is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization made up of a governing board of directors, presidents of all 15 school PTAs, and a powerhouse group of 17 advisory committees covering all areas of school life. If you are ready to be more engaged in your schools, please join your school PTA today. We start tonight's remarks by joining GEA to recognize American Education Week, and we honor the tremendous impact teachers have on everyone's lives. Thank you to our Greenwich Public School educators, staff, and administrators who are here tonight in person or are listening in on Zoom while also tucking their own kids into bed or picking up kids from practice. We appreciate, value, and respect your daily efforts to help our kids reach their fullest potential and will do our best to be strong partners in learning. Turning to hot topics in tonight's consent agenda, PTAC wants to highlight these A, Bs, and Cs for Board of Education consideration. A is for ALP. PTAC was disappointed by last month's lack of in-depth conversation about ALP. We hope that this is not a reflection of a lack of interest by the board. We previewed the video, we heard canned Q&A, and we were left wondering, where's the meat? Perhaps the BOE is comfortable with the current ALP program, but we don't know. We do know that the ALP program is extremely important for the kids and district performance. There should be no apathy or lack of interest in ensuring that the Greenwich ALP program reflects leading best practices regarding acceleration, enrichment, academic challenges, and meeting kids where they are. B is for budget and buses. PTAC appreciates the formidable efforts by administration to bring the operating budget to 2.9% guidance. That said, we're concerned that the budget is thinner than razor thin. It's not a 2.9% increase, it's a negative budget given increased contract costs and inflation. There is literally no wiggle room for enrollment shifts, rising costs of supplies, utilities, and transportation, or to meet the challenges of attracting, hiring, and retaining paraprofessionals, substitutes, and other school staff. We don't have to look any further than the bus budget this year to see the effect of being penny wise and pound foolish. It was literally chaos, including at my bus stop, and kids are still late to or from school nearly every day. We're concerned that this is a budget that says we'll need to dim the lights and keep the classrooms cooler. The administration has done well over the last few years using the budget available to bring them teaching resources up to date to reinforce curriculum across all the schools, but everyone in the town of Greenwich expects and deserves a top-rated school system. An operating budget that barely keeps the lights and heat on will struggle to provide the systemic funding needed to achieve the strategic plan and special education recommendations. And C is for Central Middle School. This school, please continue to work very closely with town bodies on the Central Middle School project. The timeline needs to be aggressive in order to limit the time that our kids, including mine and a few of yours, are in a building that's literally falling apart. Keep pushing forward on Central Middle School and all capital projects to maintain our school buildings and our fields. In closing, to help parents be strong partners in learning, we invite everyone to join our Friday, December 2nd, 11 a.m. virtual public presentation with family engagement consultant Patty Jomo and Old Greenwich School's 4-part series on fostering a love of learning, starting on Monday, December 5th. All events are posted on the PTAC website. And now, please, everyone, pull out your phone, go to greenwichalliance.org and click on the turkey to donate to the Greenwich Alliance Turkey Trot to be held on Saturday, November 26th. Greenwich Alliance is the primary fundraiser for Greenwich Public Schools. Please donate today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francis. Okay, next up, community comments. It's shorter than usual. We only have 5 speakers, so I think we'll be able to get through everyone. Up first, Jackie Homan. And as usual, everyone has 3 minutes.
Good evening, Board of Education members and Dr. Jones. I wanted to start off by thanking you for implementing the new vetting rubric for classroom materials. Hopefully, this will start to ease parental concerns regarding the curriculum and prevent some of the mishaps with inappropriate content that we've seen in the past. I'm wondering if that rubric will be applied retroactively and require a reassessment of the materials currently in use. For instance, I'm wondering if articles like The Miseducation of the American Boy or books like Persepolis would still be considered acceptable under the new vetting process. Also, I'm wondering if you plan on listing all of the approved materials on the school website so parents would have complete transparency around the curriculum. I know this is something many parents would appreciate, and I hear this request all the time. Additionally, a number of parents reached out to me and asked me to give you their thanks for removing a controversial book from the Central Middle School library. I know many parents were shocked to see the contents of this book, which carries a mature rating and is not recommended for children under the age of 17 years old in light of the extremely graphic sexual content and much more. I have passed out copies of pages from this book to you, which is still available in the high school library, along with a number of other books which have similarly graphic descriptions, as you can see from the handout. Some of the novels are so graphic and include pictures that could actually be considered obscene under federal obscenity law, but they're in our library. And parents have learned that there's a loophole to federal obscenity law in Connecticut that says if there is an educational justification for the material, then it's considered suitable for use in the schools. So parents are wondering if you could explain what the educational justification is for the use of the library books that I've highlighted to you in the pages that you have in front of you. And also in light of the fact that many parents are uncomfortable with this extremely graphic content, will you please consider adopting a new policy that requires parental consent to obtain adult content that carries a rating that is not recommended for children under the age of 17, like these books that have been highlighted to you? Thank you very much. And if anyone else would like to see copies of these pages, I have some extra copies over here at my seat.
Thank you very much, Ms. Homan. Next up, Dina Urso.
Good evening, Dr. Jones, Chairwoman Stowe, and Board of Education members. My name is Dina Urso, and I'm one of the co-presidents of the CMS PTA this year. I am here speaking in that capacity to ask for two things. The first is that you continue to support the ed specs that you had unanimously approved in August and not consider scaling them back. These ed specs are the appropriate size and layout for the current 2-team per grade model, as well as anything the future may hold. Please do not waver in your commitment to the 115,000 square foot model. The second thing we are asking for is that you please approve the hiring of the architect so the building committee can continue its work and move on to the design phase. A vote this evening will ensure that this project is staying on track and that it is being given the attention that it needs. We were happy to hear that every architectural firm that submitted proposals all recommended that the building be built on the property's back corner while the students remain in this building throughout construction. This plan will minimize any disruption to the educational process and will allow the students to stay in one building with their teachers and administration. It also will address issues like traffic flow and security in a positive, effective way when the new building is complete. While having the construction on site during the school day may not sound ideal to some, the potential positives outweigh the negatives. Students will have a front row seat to watching a project of this magnitude and size literally go up before their eyes. Who knows, maybe the next great architect or engineer will be sitting in a CMS classroom one day when a seed is planted that leads to the next Eiffel Tower or Empire State Building, and they can say they owe it all to GPS. Finally, we are optimistic that with the Board of Education's capital budget approved, there will be bipartisan support at the BET level for funding the rebuild as was promised. Thank you for your time this evening and throughout the process.
Thank you very much, Dina. Next up, Roger Rosendahl. Sorry, followed by Stephanie Cowie.
Good evening. I'm a Roger Rosendahl, a 25-year resident of Greenwich. I've been here actually several times, asking the Board of Education to adopt two customary and characteristic aspects of good government: transparency and accountability. I have to say, my perception is I may have become an annoyance. I keep saying the same thing so many times, and kind of like the parents who complain about what their kids are being taught or not being taught. I was struck, by the way, by a quote from one of your earlier speakers that you change the classroom, you change the community, you change the community, you change the world. My question is that the job of educators to change the classroom, change community, change the world? I don't think so. The job of educators is to educate. That's the focus. When I grew up, I'm dating myself, teachers and parents were closely aligned. If you got in trouble at school, you got in even more trouble at home. That's the way it was. It was all about getting a good education. That bond, that uniform alliance appears to have been, if not broken, at least fractured. And because there's, as you see, a lot of people who think differently. today. And so it's something to keep in mind. I regret that I keep coming here and keep saying the same thing, and you keep hearing the same thing. And I have to say, my conclusion is it's not going to change. I'll keep coming back. But until we replace the superintendent, until we replace board members who vote superintendent's policies, I think things will not change. And I'm here to tell you now, that will take a lot of effort, a lot of money, a lot of time. That will be the new focus. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Next up, Stephanie Cowie, followed by Ashley Cole, who will be our final speaker.
You can play music while I'm going up. This isn't my time, is it?
We will not count that in our time, Stephanie.
Hold on. No, there's just. Sorry. I
It's okay.
apologize.
You're usually so funny when you start talking.
I
so.
know, like I'm like looking down going, when it says like danger, danger, you should step away and you're sitting in it. So it does makes it a little difficult. So, hi, sorry. Good evening, Chairwoman Stowe, Board of Ed members, and Dr. Jones. I'm Steph Cowie. Most of you remember me as the GHS co-president. I have another GHS co-president behind me as well, Maureen Bonanno. While I'm no longer in that role and she's no longer in that role, our responsibilities as PTA representatives on the Secure Entry Committee remain. Later this evening, Mr. Walko will be presenting the revised GHS security entry design in response to the Board of Ed request to explore reduction in the scope due to increased construction costs. We know that you have many decisions in front of you this evening, and this project is one of them. I'm asking for your consideration as it pertains to this project. As a member of the building committee, I will never undermine the GHS Secure Entry project and will support the decision made by this board. Full disclosure, I voted no, along with Ashley Cole, to the GHS Secure Entry redesign being presented tonight. I would like to share why. The GHS Secure Entry project was prioritized in June 2018. Even back in June 2018, this project was already long overdue. In 2019, a pre-pandemic Secure Entry budget of $2.7 million was approved. Fast forward to July of 2022, and no surprise to anyone, the bids received came in at 3.9 and 4.3 million. Tonight, you will see the proposed redesign and the estimated budget, which also is over what our original budget was stated at. I ask you to consider supporting our original approved design and additional funding needs for these reasons. Today, GHS still has no secure entry, and this project was prioritized in 2018. GHS is arguably the largest town of Greenwich building and the most populated. Approximately 3,200 students and faculty enter the school every day. 200 to 300 volunteers enter the building on a weekly basis. This equates to approximately 650,000 students, faculty, and support staff during the school year. Keep in mind, this doesn't take into account any after-hours events, parents, concerts, open house, etc. The current redesign doesn't seem to even meet the ed specs originally provided by the Board of Ed. Will this redesign impact our end users? Will security be compromised because of its downsizing, sightlines? This redesign will require the same approvals from our town stakeholders, P&Z, ARC, support of our neighbors and other stakeholders, Board of Ed, RTM, and the BET. If I've missed anyone, I'm 30
so
seconds.
sorry. Based on previous discussions with neighbors, we expect this redesign to fall short, and GHS will be saddled with yet again another MISA narrative. I fear going down the path of this redesign will cause yet only another long delay. And at the end of the day, we will ultimately waste more money. Could we require even more funds? And could most important part of all is we will still be no closer to a secure entry. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Ms. Cowie. You as well. Next up on our final speaker, who I see online, is Ashley Cole. Could we bring her up?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, Ashley, go ahead.
Excellent. Good evening to everybody. Steph and I have been on this building committee for the secure entrance for over a year, way over a year. We've been working on this, and our building committee is actually very talented. Yet we were the only two of the building committee to really request and ask you to support the original design, because the original design is what this building deserves. We understand there are many projects in front of the Board of Ed that demand attention and resources, but we think this security entrance deserves to be a meaningful structure that is both excellence in form and function. As Steph said, this is our most important town building. It is the largest piece of public infrastructure, many people coming and going every day. And we also use it as a community building as well, with our symphony and other things going on. Unfortunately, Greenwich High School is a mammoth building. It lacks any architectural distinction or character. And it is most unfortunate that the largest building in Greenwich does not reflect the beauty of our town, nor the historic nature of the street and neighborhood in which it resides. And after the MISA project was built, the structure became even more imposing and out of place for the neighborhood. So we designed a glass atrium and vestibule that would add interest, a little bit of glamour to a cold brick brutalist exterior. It would not only be beautiful, it would be a useful gathering space for students and visitors. It is long past time to build something of quality and beauty that will enhance the building and the lives of the people who live, work, and around it. But perhaps the most important is the function of the security entrance. Security is incredibly important, and more so every day in a more dangerous and volatile world. Let's think about this. A smaller entrance means more limitations, a smaller holding area with a greater chance of security staff being overwhelmed in a crisis situation. With a smaller square footage, you also get a compromised entrance to the main building, and you also get compromised visuals. This is a high population school, and quite simply, whereas there's less room to gather, there's the more opportunity for chaos. And this is why I could not recommend the new design, and I recommend the original design for the security entrance for our largest town building. Thank you for everything you do. And even if you deny this, we will support the redesign. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cole. Greatly appreciated. Okay, that concludes our community comments. We're doing things a little bit differently this evening to accommodate people's schedules, and we are actually going to have our action items first. So first up is Central Middle School. Tony Turner, who is chairing this building committee. God bless him.
Madam Chairman.
Oh, do you want me to put on the table? Should I put an action on the table? Sorry to get this conversation going. Laura, can you put an give us a motion? Sorry.
Motion to consider the architect services for SLAM Collective and Tony Turner introducing the item. As
Happy to second that. Yeah.
Motion that we approve it.
Thank you. Okay, I second that. Go ahead. Now turning it over to Tony.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Jones, my name is Tony Turner, and I'm the chairman of the Central Middle School Building Committee. We are absolutely delighted to be in front of you tonight on this milestone day of being able to ask you to approve the committee's unanimous recommendation to hire the SLAM Collaborative to be the architect for the new Central Middle School. While these guys are setting up, and I'm going to ask Kemp Morehart to come up, there's a very special group of people that I want to be sure to recognize, and that is the actual building committee. We began our first meeting on July the 11th. We began weekly meetings beginning the first week in August. And not only have we met weekly, some weeks we have met 2 times during the week, sometimes on evenings for interviews. And this is a very, very strong working group. They have phenomenal credentials to be on this committee, which is why with inside of 120 days, we've been able to recommend to you tonight an architect, but also have already hired the owner's rep. So let me ask, if you're a building committee member in the audience tonight, could you please stand and let us say thank you for your work done so far? Don't be bashful, team. Come on, you can do it. Thank you. With that, the core SLAM team is here tonight, and I'm going to turn it over now to Kemp Morhart. Kemp is a principal in the firm. He is also the proposed principal in charge for this particular project. And Kemp is going to lead the presentation, introduce his team members, and then I'll have some concluding remarks after Q&A. Okay.
Thank you, Tony. Good evening, Chairwoman Stowe, Dr. Jones, and the rest of the board. We're thrilled to be here tonight to introduce our team and also to have a brief presentation with some of the expertise that our team brings to this project. I will start. I am Kemp Morhart. I'm a principal with the firm SLAM Collaborative. We are a 280-person firm headquartered in Glastonbury, Connecticut. I have been with the firm for 18 years. I've been doing public education projects for my entire career in Connecticut for about 27 years. And so I'm very pleased to introduce an extraordinary team of professionals that are here tonight. We did hand out a little brochure with a few excerpts from our team's expertise, but starting with Amy Samuelson. Amy's role will be project manager. Jim Hoagland, design architect, lead design architect. Amy Christmas, programmer planner. Amanda Hastings is on the virtual call. She is the interior designer. Henry Withers is also on the virtual call, and he is the landscape architect. Mike Parolo is on the call as well, and he's an educational planner. He has a brief presentation as part of this presentation of the group, as does Amy Christmas. And also with us are two of our consultants, Mike Walsh from CES Engineers and Andrew White from Ty and Bond, in case you have questions toward the end of our presentation. Just a few highlights about why this team is the right team for this project. We've collectively worked on several middle schools over the past 5 years or so. We've recently completed Groton Middle School in Groton, Connecticut, as well as Torrington Middle School in Torrington. We've also got plenty of experience with new builds on an existing operational school site, and Amy's going to talk a little bit more about that in detail. And so with no further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Amy and have her talk a little bit about our experience in that realm.
Do this. Thank you for having us this evening, and we're very pleased to be able to present to you tonight and work with the building committee. As Kemp mentioned, I'll be the project manager on the project, and my role would be the liaison between this talented group of professionals and our design team and your community. And so we pride ourselves on working with each community to really customize the designs that we bring and make sure that we're fulfilling the needs of the ed specs and providing the right learning environment. So in this case, for the Greenwich Central Middle School students and staff. We will bring through the process of our design, we'll bring agendas and a work plan for each of the design phases, and we'll make sure that at each of the meetings, we'll let you know what decisions need to be made, and we'll make sure that the right stakeholders are involved throughout that process so that the decisions are informed appropriately throughout. So we have examples of our work on those boards that just show the breadth of our experience. We also have experience with net zero design. It's a passion of ours, and in particular mine, I lead the green team at SLAM. And so we really would like to minimize the operational energy and minimize the embodied carbon in all of our buildings, but would like to bring that to Greenwich as well. And we'll be working closely with the engineers on the team, and Mike will be able to answer any questions about the mechanical systems in that regard too. And lastly, Kemp did mention that we have experience with building on an active school site. In the brochure, pages 16 and 17, we do have some examples of site plans that we've worked on recently. One is the Torrington Middle and High School, which is under construction now. We're placing a larger building in 7th through 12th grade on the existing high school site. And so we're building in their existing parking lot. We were able to work with an early construction phase to provide appropriate new bus loop and parking in the rear of the school, and to keep all of the students safe from the activities of construction. And as well to really make sure that the site circulation is appropriate throughout. In that case, with the added concern of student drivers. I have teenagers at home. And the other example that we have is a neighboring town to here, Darien, where there's a very tight site. We're building a new elementary school and consolidating the town's pre-K program, their ELP, all on in this location. So the existing Oxbridge School stayed up and running. Phase 1 was built, and we were able to move all of the students and staff into the new academic portion of the building, where they are having school this year. And the second phase is under construction now for the assembly spaces. So happy to discuss that and talk about some of the strategies that we've used. But it's really something that we're devoted to, keeping the safety of the existing school in mind, as well as, but understanding that it's a school first and a construction site second. So with that, I'm going to introduce Amy Christmas and Mike Perillo, who's on the screen, and they're going to talk a little bit about the visioning for Central Middle School and the customization of the design that I implied earlier.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay,
Yeah,
wow.
you sound great.
Technology is amazing. Okay. Thank you for allowing me to be with you virtually tonight. So as Kemp said and Amy said, I'm Mike Perillo, and I'll be the educational planner on the team. What I'm really excited about being with you tonight is I was actually a middle school teacher for nearly 2 decades before I started my educational planning and consulting business. Really, I stepped away from the middle school classroom because I wanted to make a bigger impact in education and really elevate teachers and students. And so I'm getting to continue that work with you tonight in starting this project. So thank you for that opportunity. As the educational planner, my job is really to be this bridge, this educational bridge and lens that connects all of the work that SLAM does, the architect, with the desired vision for teaching and learning that the educators have. So I'll start the work with you early on, and we'll look at what teaching and learning really wants to be in Central Middle School. We'll look at the teaming model, we'll look at child development, and then all of that work that we do in the beginning, we will use that as the basis and foundation for decision-making as Amy Christmas and SLAM takes that and turns it into the educational program and turns it into spaces. And while they pick up from where we left off, I will then be along for the ride throughout the process, making sure that any decisions that come to mind with the building design are really checked in and assessed using the educational plan and the vision that we built together as a community, a school community, a bigger, greater community in the beginning of this process.
Thanks, Mike. I am the other Amy of Team Amy. And my role is, I like to tell our clients that my job is to bring to the project I bring the identification of the quantity of space, but also the quality of the space. And so working hand in hand with Mike at the beginning, understanding the curriculum, the pedagogy, working with staff and students and understanding how the spaces want to be developed, the adjacencies, the size of pods, and the arrangements of teams in the building, that allows us to identify the quantity of space. Always looking towards obviously the budget, but also making sure that we're aligning appropriately with the OSCGR allowable square footage and making sure that we're making decisions informed for that process. We then get to switch over into the quality of the space and making sure that we identify appropriate finishes, ceiling heights, where we need transparency in a building and where we do not, and take that throughout the entire process. We'll bundle that up and we'll create a document that captures all of that information, and then we'll work with Jim. Where's Jim? You coming? And Jim, who will take that through the design and be able to deliver a building perfectly suited for Greenwich Central Middle School.
Thank you. So the SLAM team actually had a really great opportunity through the RFP process and the interview process to facilitate and demonstrate the process that our team wants to go through beginning to end. You've heard from a couple of folks here, the programmers and visioning sessions that we anticipate will set the stage for the overall project. But backing up a little bit, we started looking at some of the elements that we knew were going to be really important to you. Through the ed spec. We felt that the ed spec was very comprehensive, and it was really the only information that we had to start from as we got into the interview process. So as we got into dissect that a little bit, we're looking at the potential structure for some of these middle school teams. You have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. It can be a very difficult age for these kids, and I think the design of the building is going to really affect the social interactions of these age group kids, as well as the learning opportunities in the overall environment. So we talked about trying to activate some of these hallways, and then it was one of the things that we talked about with the building committee. How can we activate hallways, really excite some of these kids about learning, putting learning on display? And it really kind of boiled back down to some of the program elements. We spent a fair amount of time talking about the media center and how it could potentially be the hub of the school, really always recentering the kids back into a portion of the building that we felt was going to be really important educationally to them. And then also thinking about the separation between the academic components, really the classrooms, and how those teams are structured, as opposed to the community elements. I think the auditorium, the gymnasium, the cafeteria, and the media center, all going to be really, really important community elements within the structure of the building. So it will be important as to how the building gets sited, and how those pieces get organized in the adjacencies. You spent a little bit of time talking a little bit about a secure entry at the high school. We have an opportunity to start from scratch, and it will be planned in to the building, and very thoughtful. The other big element here that the team talked about early in the interview process was how this building fits on the site. You have a 21-acre site. There's an existing building there. We recognize the fact that there's going to be a fully occupied school there, and it needs to remain fully functional and safe for the students. So where this new building gets structured is going to be important, not only for the end result, but also when you have 2 full buildings on site. So our initial impression was to push the building as far north on the site, and there is an existing site plan here. So up where the baseball field is in the general proximity is where we're looking at initially siting the building, which I think makes sense because it gives you the opportunity to place some parking directly in front of that building to access all those community spaces, the auditorium, gymnasium, cafeteria, and media center. And then once the existing building gets torn down, you have the opportunity to reorient all the necessary play fields. So based on the ed spec, we're looking at a brand new building, a request for about 250 spaces, as well as 3 play fields. And right now those play fields overlap significantly. We may be able to create a little bit more space on site where maybe those fields potentially cannot be overlapped and be standalone fields. But there will be some give and take, and that's one of the things that the SLAM team is really, really good at, because we're an integrated team. We have our landscape architects, integral part of the team, constant part of the conversation, as well as our programmers and visioners. And that's one of the strengths of our team. And then lastly, we're recognizing on this site, we have construction. We're going to have to think about where construction access comes in and that clear delineation between the new school and the existing school, just to make sure that the students on site remain safe through the entire process of construction. The other thing that we desperately need to think about is the neighborhood, the surrounding neighborhood. We recognize the fact that we're going to have this will be a construction site for quite a while. We're going to try to minimize any kind of impact on the surrounding neighborhood. The neighborhood is used to having a school there, but the school is obviously going to be in a different location. It's going to have a slightly different scale to it. And so it's going to be different. So the SLAM team recognizes that we have to be thoughtful about each and every decision, because wherever we put a building, a playfield, parking, is going to affect the neighborhood. And then lastly, and we're certainly not to this point in the thought process, but we need to make sure that this new school fits in contextually to the neighborhood. We have some neighbors that are right across the street, right next door, right down the street. And there's a very sensitive nature to the neighborhood. We don't want to disrupt things that are going on. There may be things that we can fix and make a little bit better as we go through the decision-making process for this project. But we certainly do not want to have a negative impact. We want to be a real positive thing for the neighborhood as we move forward through design. So I think on that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ken.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, team. Just in closing, I just want to make a few more points. On our cover, I wanted to bring your attention to our mission statement as a firm. And hopefully you've seen a little bit of the excitement and enthusiasm that this team will bring to this project, but creativity in design to enrich lives is what gets this team up every morning and enthusiastically coming to work on creating new schools for communities just like yours. On the back side, the back cover, are some vision statements that we also hold really true to our work. When we succeed when our clients succeed. We are one team working together on a project. We're curious and open-minded. We are driven. But I think one of the most important ones is we know that trust is earned. And hopefully we've started to set the groundwork with the building committee, with the process that we've started with them already. And we are dedicated to elevating the communities within which we work. And with that, I would like to open it up for any questions you might have.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Okay, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. Great presentation. You mentioned that you guys did the Groton Middle School. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out, and that absolutely helps me a lot. That's right by the Pfizer campus, right by Shore Concert Road, right by Baker's Cove, where I happen to be building about a half dozen homes myself. And so I've driven by that project as a builder, as an investor builder, and the builder of those homes there and in Groton. And I drive by that building as a Board of Ed member of Greenwich and saying, you know, that's a really good looking building and it's moving along quite well. I didn't know until now that you mentioned it, that you guys did that. And I said, you know, Groton is not quite as wealthy a community as Greenwich, Connecticut. And I'd say, boy, how come we don't have a building being built as well as that, as quickly as that, and as seemingly efficient as that? So I'm glad you did that. And that certainly helps me certainly support you guys. So a good job on that building. I spoke to Tony yesterday, and his enthusiasm towards you guys is certainly enough for me. I've known Tony a little while now. I'm on another committee with him, and certainly his support certainly makes it easier to win mine. And of course, Laura's support is the ultimate for me. So as long as you got Laura on your team, then pretty much you'll have me on your team. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the nice comments.
Michael Joseph.
Hi, I saw, when this was sent out earlier today, I was wondering if you might be able to talk through, what, a little bit of page 7 here. What that represents, the different team configuration options.
Sure, I'm going to ask Jim to elaborate on that a little bit.
So this was some material that we included in the interview process, and the 3 examples that we put out there were really grounded in the ed specs. We tried to extract what we thought a middle school team could be. There's a lot of different ways that you can function within a team. So the 3 examples that you see are ideas where we grouped 5 classrooms, a science room, and then an open area, which could be a learning commons. It could be a small area where special ed teachers could do pull out or push in. You could take 1 or 2 students out of a classroom to do any number of different activities with them. And part of the debate here was how do the teachers get supported within that team too? Do those 4 or 5 teachers function independently and have their own little office? We could create some professional type offices where they can do their class prep and always have eyes on the street, being able to see the students changing classes. So we didn't really actually get into a lot of detail in the interview process, but the SLAM, we more so wanted to demonstrate how our process works. And there's not just one way to look at something. There's any number of different solutions to a problem. And we don't feel like we've heard enough of the background and how the teachers are going to have to use the building, how the students are going to move through the building to create the adjacencies, which ultimately are going to be the school. So these are just 3 graphic examples. We use the 3D Revit modeling tools to demonstrate these ideas early in design. And we think that the ideas get across fairly easily and understandably when we're working with the building committee.
Ms. Costin, did you want to say anything?
No, I'm obviously very encouraged by their level of experience in Greenwich, having been through some planning and zoning processes here, and having the experience that they do with occupied learning environments that have, students rotating through them. So I thought that they were just very thoughtful and interested in collaboration. And I think that that's the best possible scenario for us.
Ms. Downey?
Okay, I just wanted to say, I think that was a very impressive presentation. I think your team really seems thoughtful and experienced and already very vested in this project even before now. And we very much appreciate that, given that this has been on an accelerated timeframe for us, I'm sure for you as well. So I just wanted to echo Joe's comments about how impressive the group seems and that you've done a lot of great work. I have one question about the finances because that's not really for the architects. It's really more for Mr. Turner when we get to that. Ms. Stowe.
Okay, well, we might be there. I just had one comment, which is I have a child here and we'll have another one here. So I think a lot about the parent who is saying there's a building coming right next to us. And I love how you're thinking about it. I know that Dr. Jones even at one point said to me, we'll incorporate it into the education. And I think so what I thought might be a negative could turn into a positive. And it sounds like you guys are thinking that way as well. And that brings a lot of comfort. So thank you. Ms. Hirsch.
Although I don't have a child here or nor am I a neighbor, I do really appreciate that one of the things you did bring forward, because it's something I know we as a board have talked about a lot, is how this fits into the surrounding community, because there are several other schools in this neighborhood. Traffic has been a concern for the neighbors in this area and many other things. So thank you for taking that into consideration as well. I have to say, I too was highly impressed with this, and the fact that you've also worked with other schools within our town means that you are rather familiar with our town processes, I would hope. And I think that that's really encouraging, having spoken to some of the members of the committee who, had glowing things to say, but also made me very comfortable and confident with this. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other questions, could we ask Tony to step back to the podium?
Yes, Madam Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Jones, to wrap up, I want to be sure that you know that the people you've heard from tonight are the same people, the same core team members that will be going to the local governmental bodies for approval along the way, be it P and Z and so forth. We feel strongly that you needed to meet the actual people who's going to represent the Central Middle School process or project locally. Getting approval, as you know, is a very short and easy process. That was my attempt
you
at
just trying to
humor
see if we're
for
listening?
tonight. Yeah. I think putting forth the core members of the team we felt it very important for you to note that. Also, I think we should point out to the experience with this team with the state reimbursement process. That is very critical to the cost of this project. And I think it's probably clear by now, either through the boards that you see here or that you've gotten into your packet earlier, SLAM knows Connecticut middle schools. So when it comes to the reimbursement process, we feel we have a lot of confidence around that. Their cost was very competitive. Overall, we think they are a fantastic fit for this project, which is why we voted unanimously to recommend to you the approval. So with that, I'll stop now.
Did you have a question, Ms. Downey, on the
Yeah,
financials?
yeah. So I just want to be sure I understand, I'm not trying to upset the apple cart here, but because of how our A&E process works and town appropriations and funding, because, and I know we won't go through the full A&E money that's been allocated this year, probably by the 2.5 million that's in the budget that we currently have. We're not going to burn through it, but this contract exceeds that amount. So I guess my question is more, are you dealing with town legal, or how are we going to manage that portion of the process? Is it problematic? Because I know, or does it just come out of the construction budget, or has the building committee not really spoken about how to handle this? I'm kind of trying to figure out whose ball, which court, kind of where we need to address this. Or is the contract structured in such a way that it's not a problem?
You ask great questions. I'll say yes, so I can sit down immediately. Where we are actually is the day after the committee selected SLAM with the view of coming here, is we recognize the gap, if you will, between the A&E allocation and the proposed fee from SLAM. So I immediately reached out to several people, one of them being the town attorney. We're waiting to hear back now from the town attorney, their best thinking on what we should do. So in short, that's where we are.
Okay, no, that's much appreciated, because by my calculation, the amount, the construction amount is different than A&E. So it does that, it's not that full figure, it gets reduced. So it's only a small differential, of a couple $100,000, $200,000 maybe. So so will we get a report back, or Laura will tell us what's happening, or how do we want to handle that?
So I will keep you apprised, but it is our understanding that, the A&E money we have is early money to get to design. And the remaining funds would be part of soft costs that are related to the building of the project.
As long as it allows us to sign the contract with the architect. I don't want anything that's
Well,
going to inhibit
we
that
don't know
ability.
until we hear back from town legal.
Great. Okay, thank you.
That's a very key question, but we've got to hear back from them.
Thank you.
That's great. So I think what's in front of us, though, this evening is simply, do we like this architect? And then the board will take a vote on that.
Yes, that's the ask, and we do ask for your support.
So that's the motion on the table. Yes, Michael Joseph?
Just one comment. So, I don't have any reservations, and I appreciate everything was said. I would just, whenever I see marketing material like this and some of the pictures, and I know why they exist and things, I just would encourage the building committee to continue to remain cautious around what education research says about what we know works best for middle schools and things like that. Like we know that we can get pictures of teachers in front of big red boards in front of cafeterias with kids sitting on the floor. It looks nice, but is that the best way to teach math? Obviously, no. But I know that's not why it's here. We work very hard with the ed specs to try to be mindful of putting in there what we know works best, right, and best practices, and the ed specs try to speak to that. And I just would caution to be careful when it comes to bells and whistles and things like that. Make sure we just have to make sure that everything continues to be grounded in the research. And I know you guys are doing that. I feel like that's an important thing because all these pictures we all get excited by glossy photos and things.
Yes.
We need to ground it in the research.
So noted. Thank you.
Okay. So, yep, the question. Okay, the motion on the table. All in favor? Do you want me to read it again? Yes, it was simply the motion to approve the CMS architect. Okay, all in favor? That passes 8-0. Thank you. Welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving to our next building that we're looking to take care of. Greenwich High School. Steve Walco, is this your first time to the podium? Okay, can you put the motion on the table, Ms. Downey?
I'm going to get a motion. I'm going to move that the board make an interim request of $500,000 to cover the increased costs for the GHS entryway project.
I am happy to second that motion. Mr. Walco.
Good evening. I am here as chairman of the Greenwich High School Vestibule Building Committee. Here with me, I think, is Lauren Rabin. Ashley is virtual or might be. We have Steph and Maureen who are also here, and Leslie Moriarty and Christina, of course. We're here really twofold. One is to ask for $500,000 to complete the project, and one is also for approval of the design. We've shared with you that design money, or the design that we've now selected based on the instructions that were given to us. Just by way, a little bit of background, after the bids came in on the first design, which, as you all know, had received significant scrutiny both from our land use agencies, but also just the public at large and the neighborhood. We went out to bid, and in fact, those bids generally came in at $4 million. A little over 4 was one of them. We then went back to those the 2 bids that we thought were qualified and really asked them, even though they didn't have to, but they provided us with some unit pricing and how they got to that number. Well, one of the major drivers of the project, this maybe doesn't come as a surprise, was in fact the glass and the glazing of that glass to be both ballistic and bomb-proof, which is a requirement. That is not an option. And so we then put pen to paper and asked our architects to redesign a new vestibule. The process has not been an easy one because, in fact, if you look at your own ed specs, they talk about both the security function and the entrance function of this. And in reality, that duality is effectively impossible if you want a grand entrance and security under or within the budget. But we did ask our architects, and I should say David Stein is probably on. I don't know if he is, but I'm assuming he is. And also I forgot to mention Dennis, who is here. We undertook the task of asking the architects to design something that was within budget. Their answer effectively is that's not feasible. And it's not feasible because in order to protect this area of the school, and again, I won't say the number, but as you all know, there are tens of doors, exterior doors to Greenwich High School. And yes, we have talked at length about how this is only solving one area of that. We are not here to solve every exterior door at Greenwich High School and the security that surrounds those exterior doors. But at the main entrance, In order to effectively halt somebody before they enter the actual building, and in this case, the glass corridor, you would need a vestibule. And is a larger vestibule better? Yes, but that comes at a price. We think we've struck the right balance, both by protecting taxpayer dollars, by not asking for only the amount we need, and for ensuring that the security aspect of this is not compromised. We think we've reached that balance. It is a smaller vestibule. There is a lot less glass, but it still will direct any visitor coming into those 4 sets of double doors into the administrative wing. We are still doing minor renovations to the administrative area to accomplish this. And we do have a security desk that overlooks the courtyard and this vestibule. You could also look at it another way. This amount of money, $500,000, if you took into account the additional funds we need for the redesign, if you take into account the additional monies we need for what the land use agencies required of us and that the neighborhood asked of us in terms of screening, the add alternates to glaze at least the front of the glass corridor. So the remaining portion with bomb and ballistic proof glazing, you effectively reach this number. So with that, we've supplied you with information. Any questions?
Ms. Downey, sorry, did you want to just give us a little bit?
No, I
your
think,
thoughts
and
on that?
Mr. Wolko, as always, is eloquent and explained everything in great detail. So, and I've spoken with many board members to ask if people had questions, was happy to answer them. I think this is a balance, right? I think we all felt that while I respect Steph and Ashley's point of view, I think we as a board made a decision that the amount of money involved in the original design was just more than we could stomach. And I think this is a reasonable balance. It's an attractive entranceway. It's about half the size of the original one. So it provides an entrance so that you know where to go at Greenwich High School. It also provides the security function and it provides the access to the office. So it really does achieve our goals at a much more cost-efficient price than the original design did. So I think it's worth supporting to the point earlier that Maureen and Steph said, if we don't have this, we have nothing. And we did talk about how small and how little we could do. And there are just certain practical realities of, you're not just going to put like a security guard in a case outside the front of the high school because that doesn't meet the criteria that are needed about having 2 sets of doors, et cetera. I wish David were on tonight, but he had a very eloquent explanation of that process. But that's why we included at the end the state guidelines on security entrances so that the board members could see that.
Mr. Kelly.
Well, I'm kind of going to say kind of the same thing. Steph, I agree with Ashley and Steph. We had designed something that we're making less. And I'm not good with that because we made a plan based on what we needed. We made a plan based on what we wanted to do. And because of the money, we've decided to do something less. And so I agree with them. But the harsh reality of the 3 years I've served on the board, we've looked at things we've needed. And sometimes we put a number on things and we're delayed because we put a number on something that we needed, but there's only a finite amount of money. But with that concern, I did call Steve, who I trust implicitly. He happens to be a friend of mine, and I'm happy that he made me rest assured that the redesign is something that will protect its safety, of course, and will be adequate. It might not be what we're hoping for, but it's adequate for the resources we have. Then I called Christina after I spoke to Steve, and she also, who I trust her as well, assured me that we were making some design compromises, some size compromises, but we're not doing any safety compromises. Safety is paramount. We have to make sure the kids are safe. So that being said, I have to look at the reality of the finite amount of cash, and I'm going to have to support this.
Michael Joseph.
Thanks, Steve. So I remember the last time this went to the board, there was a lot of conversation around the security workstation. And if I recall, the ed specs didn't, or the architectural plans left it to a question as to later as whether they could be enclosed or open and whatnot. Is that still the case with this with this revised?
The area is much more compact. If you look at the design of this, it's now, and these renderings, by the way, we have a good amount of work to do in the design phase. If you look to the right of the design, I know that's not your question, but I'll get to it. You see this sort of wood, horizontal wood. We're not sure we're going to stay with that or that window there. Somebody even called that a drive-up window look. So we're gonna work on those things over time. The current entrance, because there's you would actually have to come through a door, so it would be secure. I don't think we've chatted yet about whether or not once you enter into the side door to get to the security that you're going to actually have security glass there to protect that individual. If you have an opinion, we're all ears.
Yes.
So thank you for going back to the table and taking what we asked and bringing us something that's more in line with the budget that we've been given and still meets the needs of the students, their security and our administration in town in a lot of ways. And I mean, I know we're talking about this and I will really echo what Joe said. You know, it's not what we originally decided upon or what we looked at, but we have to be understanding that we are beholden to all taxpayers to sort of stay in that line. And it's still already bigger and better than what is currently there. For those who've been at our high school, it's a small, narrow glass corridor and students walk through there and there's security there already. So this is already an incredible improvement. My silly question is, because I know you mentioned it and it's been mentioned so many different times. We are required by P&Z to add ornamental grasses and trees and so forth outside. And so I don't see those listed on this design, which is clearly fine. But I just want to make sure, because we have reduced some of the sizing and things like that, that we are going to make sure that we go back and look at that to make sure they're not blocking sight lines for security across the street. I mean, still providing some cover, but not blocking the sight lines, because I know that was a big discussion before.
So we're going to take it one step further. Effectively, the committee held firm to the entire design of the landscaping as sacrosanct because of the various discussions we had with both P&Z and the neighborhood. So what has happened here is actually the screening that was required for the larger project and for the neighborhood was untouched by this and is baked into this budget.
Perfect. And you'll just make sure that obviously I have full faith that you will make sure that nothing is blocking views that are necessary to have, I guess, for security. So thank you. You've answered my question.
So Steve, since I know you tend to be good at town processes, the next step, if we approve this, would be you have to go for the interim appropriation, BET, then RTM as a building committee.
You have to
It's
ask
actually
for
us.
it.
Well, I thought
We'll
that's
be
right.
there.
No,
I
because
thought the
we are
building committee had
No,
to
but
do
we
it.
are the board. It's our money that we then allocate to the building committee. We
Okay,
have to ask the BET and the RTM for an additional appropriation for our project, which
Fine.
the building committee, but the building committee really wanted us to, we have to make a decision about this, but also it allows the building committee to continue the revisions to the final design. As I said, we'd reached a point at design where we had a budget that we could work with. And now, as Steve pointed out, like some of the treatments, some of the nuances of the project, we can move forward with if the funding is going to be forthcoming, because we did not want to start spending more time with architects if the board didn't support moving forward with the project.
okay. So then, okay, go ahead, Karen.
So what is the amount of this that we would be eligible for reimbursement from the state?
Well, on the original amount, it's a 20% reimbursement rate. But if we, it's a question of whether we add this additional money into our request for state reimbursement, we would need to go restart the state reimbursement process. So I'm not sure if we want to do that for the extra $100,000 as opposed to saying we can live with the 20% on the 2.75 that we've already applied for.
I think we have to go back to the state anyway. It's a different
Well, I
project.
think we have to. I don't know if it starts the clock ticking. Yeah, we do have to go back to the state regardless, but the question is whether asking for additional money screws, it might or it might not.
So you asked about process. So we intend to go through this process and be shovel ready come end of school year and truly try to have everything lined up, materials and the like available to hit the ground and actually get this project done during most of it during the summer of 2023. It's ambitious from a construction standpoint. It's not ambitious from when we can start. We think we have enough time built into this. So we will continue the redesign. We will then be in a position to then go before all the land use agencies. We will then also have those conversations with the state. And we're comfortable with then having state approval all before we then go out to bid in early or late spring, be in a position then to shovel in the ground come first day of summer or school recess. Other than that process, even the going before the BET, we're happy to carry the water, if you will, on that once the application is made and then to the RTM.
And just to follow that up also, this, from my my discussions with our state reimbursement consultant, this ultimately, we approved you may or may not recall, we approved the package before it went to the state or went out for bidding. We as a board are going to have to do that again. So that'll be final design, construction documents, and the like, that we as a board will have to approve somewhere along that timeline.
Okay. I mean, it seems feasible, but still ambitious to get it done, but I hope so, because it seems like we've been talking about this for years. It'd be nice to actually have that for next year when school's open. Okay, Ms. Costin, then.
So, two questions. Well, one question, one statement. I think we should have gone back to ask for the $1.7 million. We've got 3,000 people centered in one place. We shouldn't have downsized this. We should have just asked for the $1.7 million. We have a building on the other side of town that needed $5 million extra from the finance board without 3,000 people passing through it. So I think we should have just stuck with the original plan because this has sort of delayed the project. And the idea that you just can't put a price on our student safety, but we're now delayed, be that as it may. Will this go to the RTM in December? When do you have to go to the RTM and go through that whole process?
That's a good.
Yeah, I was going to say it's close,
So maybe.
but you have to get the
We also need the BET.
Mr. BET, you have to get the BET approval first. Right, you were on that town body once.
Sure. I mean, but and countless, I shouldn't say countless times, but certainly there were always opportunities in which to have that process inverted. But we can talk about that, about whether or not that delays us. I'm not sure that it will anyway. We're not in a position, we don't even have a design that we're comfortable with in full. So I'm not sure whether we hit that deadline or we hit
And
next
we also
year in
have to get
terms
through
of
planning and zoning.
funding. I think I'm not worried about that aspect of it.
No, you're right. I think it's probably the least of our problems. So, okay, so, well, oh, sorry, Karen, you had a question.
So you may not be able to answer this, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. So based upon this redesign, and we think that the additional $500,000, and then you had mentioned that it would go out to bid again. Are we comfortable with this new design and the work of the architects as to this price? So we don't kind of end up in a situation where we're at now.
Sure. The answer is yes, and I have greater confidence than I normally would because of the fact that we actually use the pricing that the prior bids came in with. Not only that, we then, outside of the architects, used our own efforts. In particular, Leslie Moriarty from the BET helped work on effectively go-forward basis. So we built in, we effectively put aside or handicapped money for things like contingency and the like. So we think that that will be well within, I should say well within the budget. We will be within this budget for this project.
Okay, so I think if we are, what we're voting on here is the additional 500,000. If this design is satisfactory to us, we then can figure out the when we need to go to the BET and then the RTM with Steve. There any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to call the vote. No? Okay. So all in favor of the motion on the table? Okay. All opposed? Okay, that passes 7-1. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Walko. Nice seeing you. Okay. Moving on, since we're doing things in reverse order, to monthly reports. Dr. Jones.
Thank you. I just want to mention a couple of items. First of all, I also want to just say about the National Honor Society, what a great event that was and just how impressive the students were that evening. It was 270 students and the high school has it down like a well-oiled machine. But just the way the students presented themselves, they were just such a high level and it was incredibly impressive. So congratulations to all those students. I also want to just note that Veterans Day, I had, one of our veterans that reached out over the last week, just saying, are the schools doing anything? Is there, do you actually honor the veterans because you are in school? And, we were talking when I was at Riverside's actually, and I leaned across to one of my colleagues and I actually said, what's so wonderful is that we are in school because every single student gets something for Veterans Day and the assemblies that go on at our school, the guest speakers in the classrooms, and it's pre-K through 12. I mean, it's really wonderful what happens in all of our buildings. So thank you to all of the many, many veterans that we were able to honor, but also to the staff that really pull all of those wonderful events together. I had the opportunity last night to be at the Special Education Advisory Council, and that was a pleasure. We spent, I think it was at least an hour answering questions just about our mental health and how we approach that in Greenwich Public Schools. And I think more than anything, my takeaway was there were more than 30 people on the call, several people who are not part of the committee. They were there because they were interested in the topic. And as you remember, it was just 3 years ago that the board put forward your support to start that council, and it's thriving and making such a difference for us. So very grateful for that. Also, I just want to note, I had the opportunity yesterday to meet with the Alliance Executive Board. And again, they do so many wonderful things for us. And we spent time discussing, the AVID program. And I can't say enough about that because it truly is the only school district that I've known where there's a program that not only for first generation students with AVID, where they support the students, but they follow them all the way through college to make sure that they are successful. And that is very, very unique. Just two last items. I want to mention the calendar adjustment was going to be on the calendar for the calendar tonight for the 2024-2025. We didn't put it on because we're working with GEA and GOSET, trying to see how we can make our calendar a little more effective for professional development, and also looking at that second conference, which we've mentioned to the board as part of our strategic planning and working with families. So that's all for me.
I was just going to add, I had the pleasure of attending Parkway with my dad because he is a veteran. And this was our last year doing it there since my last child is graduating from the elementary school. But there were, maybe 8 vets. My dad was definitely on the older side. But it was wonderful. And the questions the kids asked of these women and men was fantastic. And I do think I also had my moments of wondering why we were in school on Veterans Day. And then I thought they're actually learning about the veterans and their questions. One of the kids was like, did any of you get hurt? Thankfully, the answer was no. But it was a lot of fun. So, and it's very important. So thank you. Mr. Kelly.
On that same note, I got to go to COSCOP school. That was cool. We had like 30 or so vets, not to try to outdo you, but the numbers were there. I'll tell you, one of the kids, it was incredibly cute. You just had to see it. They sent the kids out to interview the 30 different vets. So all the kids are walking up asking certain questions. There was one kid, he took his pencil and he was as if he was interviewing him. He put the I thought it was great, but what a great thing. And so I agree with you. Being in school and having those events were awesome. And we'll try to make sure if anyone could find that time who didn't get a chance to go and experience this, certainly try to do it next year because it's well worth it.
Yes, Michael Joseph.
Yeah, Dr. Jones, would you mind clarifying what you meant by the second conference?
So we've been in discussions about having a second parent conference for elementary. Eventually, we want to have parent conference for middle and high. But that's just part of our kind of growth over the next couple of years. But that's been a request from PTA. Our Title I schools held a second conference last year. And so we're looking at what that could look like. Right now, there's a lengthy report that goes home from the teachers. They spend a lot of time on it, but the parents don't see that as valuable as much as they would having another conference. But we have to get the calendar to work to make that happen.
Karen, did you have a question? Fine. All right, well then, I'll turn it to you for committee report.
Well, I was just tagging on to what Dr. Jones had said. Mike and I were on the SEAC call yesterday for their meeting. And I know that Dr. Jones explained what a lot of the agenda was, but in addition to that, they last night met and after a successful lottery, welcomed 6 new members to SEAC, voting members. They also launched their new webpage and are looking for public feedback. And you can find that through our new GPS webpage as well. So if you do have feedback and you think things are great, let us know. And if you think things need to be adjusted or missing, let us know that as well. And we'll make sure or reach out to SEAC actually. They also introduced 2 new committees last night, the Behaviors and a Consistency Committee, who will be meeting for the first time this month, and they'll be giving updates going forward. And then their Enrichment Committee also shared a discussion on winter and spring parent programs and presentations. Once they have those presentations in place and or dates, we will make sure that we share them. I know that Dr. Jones will also have those sent out, or Dr. Heigenthaler, in our special education newsletter and or probably our other parenting newsletters as well. So I think that's it. Did I miss anything? Okay.
Mr. Kelly.
I got a couple. One quick announcement, and if I forget a team that's doing quite well, please somebody jump in if you can. The boys soccer team is in the state championships on Saturday. If they win, it'll be the first time the boys soccer team has ever won a state championship, I believe. And if there's other things to add, please jump in. This will be my second to last comments about Cardinal Stadium. We met with our CFO Blaze, who informed us that we were under budget. So that's an accomplishment. That's a good thing. You don't get that quite often. And also because of the cooperation with the town on giving us a temporary CFO, we were able to get a partially built Cardinal Stadium opened before we had planned it to be open to get a game in home. So we got it in ahead of schedule as well. So we were under budget and ahead of schedule. That's good news. Next and last announcement of Cardinal Stadium will be when we get our certificate of occupancy. We have a couple of tree issues we just have to deal with, and then we're good to go. Next one, virtual net metering. We decided to partner with the town on virtual net metering. So we're going out with an RFP, working together with the town to go out. And because of changes in legislation, we believe there's greater opportunity. And we canceled the agreement we had with the virtual net metering group. And we feel going out to a broader group with an RFP will be beneficial and cleaner. So we're going to take care of that. The Energy Management Advisory Committee is hosting the Zero Energy Ready Building workshop on December 5th, Town Hall at 7 o'clock. They asked me to mention that today. And we talked briefly in the Budget Committee. I don't want to steal any of your thunder about possibly considering bringing in a team to review our efficiency and our energy use in the buildings. based on the fact that the energy prices have gone up exponentially over the last year or so. So that's something we might be working with with our EMAC and getting a solution. Another project, we met with the waterfall project. Ashley Cole organized that. It looks like we're going to hire a team to do an evaluation of the area to find out how we could clean that up properly and make sure we do it to the best way possible. We brought a lot of partners in on that. It looks like we will be progressing nicely. And last but not least, the JC Building Committee met early stages. We have an absolutely strong team, so I am very optimistic about what we're going to accomplish at JC in the near future. Thank you.
Ms. Hirsch.
Mr. Kelly, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely, you can.
I know we had the pleasure of speaking to some of the civics class at the high school the other day. And I know you mentioned you were off to the waterfall committee meeting. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that. But you mentioned hiring a team to evaluate the area. Is that something you're going to bring before us? Because if it's, I don't know, is that in our budget? Or
No, this is going to be privately funded. So this is going to be
so it's a gift, so we'd still need to discuss that, I think.
Depends on the amount of the cost of having the evaluation. If we don't, if it's not under the limits that we have, of course, we'll proceed accordingly.
Just wanted to check.
Thank you for reminding me.
No, I'm excited to see what's happening out there.
Michael Joseph.
So the old Greenwich Building Committee continues to meet weekly as well. They put out their RFP for an architect this week. And we are hoping for to have an architect following CMS's lead. We're hoping to target the January board meeting for a presentation from the architect that we selected, that committee has selected.
Thank you. Cody.
The Greenwich Alliance for Education has its turkey trot going on, which I know is already mentioned, but I'll mention it again. Julian Curtis is in the lead. Registrations end November 23rd. From what I hear, North Miami, Cos Cob, and North Street are all competitive, so they should all register. The event is on November 26th, which is a Saturday, so hopefully some of you will go.
Are you running?
I hate running, so I will be busy. But I will donate.
Excellent. Ms. Costin.
The CMS Building Committee presented its architect and it was unanimous.
Thought you were serious for a second.
I did attend yesterday's DTAC meeting and we reviewed the nomination packets for the distinguished teachers as well as the vetting rubric. So I'm excited that in the near future, we'll have some teachers recognized and administrators for their amazing work.
Okay. Anything else, guys? No? Okay. Moving on, let's start our discussion. Special Education Action Planning. Dr. Helen Genthaler. I wanted to do it, okay, because how did I do? I didn't do it. So every time I talk about you on the radio, I always say Dr. H, and Tony Savino always sort of says, come on, try it.
So think of it high, like Heiligen taller.
Oh, I'm going to practice at home first.
Yeah. See, it's the teacher in me, you know?
Exactly.
So I submitted the recorded presentation on Friday. So as Michael Joseph shared, I'm 2 for 2 on that, although it is awkward talking to myself as I record, but thank you. So if you have questions on the presentation.
Michael Joseph, I'm just going to look to you first. Why don't you get us started?
So thank you for the update. Obviously, this continues to be important work. We talked a little bit previously, and what I talked to Dr. Heiligen-Thaler about was MTSS, right? Multi-tiered systems of support, and your presentation talked a lot about Tier 1. but I was hoping you might be able to touch a little bit on tier 2 and 3, right? Maybe we might want to back up and just explain, what we mean by MTSS 2 and then.
Right, so our MTSS, or our multi-tiered systems of support, is a way to support students who are struggling. When we look at our tier 1 instruction, it is what's happening in the general education classroom that can be supported by the general education teacher. So in collaboration with the MTSS team, they're able to make suggestions that can be carried out as general strategies that might be able to be used to support students. When a student continues to not make progress, the MTSS committee then reviews what has been tried, reviews present levels, any kind of scores, link it, classroom-based assessments, and make recommendations in terms of what types of support. And so that might be working with one of our literacy specialists or one of our math interventionists in working on those skills that are identified. And it's very targeted. So if you have a student who is having difficulty in phonics, that's the area that we're looking at, not just literacy as a whole. So there's different supports that are used by those specialists and able to support the student. And if we're in a tier 2 intervention and a student continues to not make progress, we look at a tier 3, which is usually a smaller group and a longer, more intense program so that we move through those tiers. And if we don't see progress for a student who moves through those tiers, at that point, that would then trigger a referral to special education. Each cycle is about 6 to 8 weeks. This is not meant to be a process, and in the past, it was a student might be in MTSS for a very long time, and that's not what our goal is. Our goal is to provide the intervention and to see that progress. And as we do progress monitoring, if we don't see a student improving, that's when we move to the next tier or we make a referral. So that's the process for students. And some students might just be receiving tier 1, tier 2, get back on track with that extra support and move out of MTSS. So I want to be clear, it's not necessarily if you enter MTSS, you go into special ed. It really is an intervention to help keep students out of special ed because we're intervening early and targeted. And when students respond to that, that's actually an indication that they don't have a specific learning disability. So we use that as part of our data in determining eligibility as well.
Cool. So, and my understanding is we've expanded our, for lack of a better term, our menu of interventions, the types of interventions that we can bring to play, given the needs of the student. So I don't know if you could give some examples or talk a little bit about how, so what some of these tier 2 and tier 3 programs look like, or plans for how we're continuing to expand.
So in literacy, we have using Orton-Gillingham methodology, using Heggerty, some of the Kilpatrick resources, and then in math, we're using Bridges. So those are interventions that we would be using for students, and each one is targeted based on the specific need of a student. So again, the group would be everybody is working on phonics. They're not mixed groups, they're extremely targeted.
Downey. Oh, sorry, you had more. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had more. Go ahead. No, finish.
I was just going to comment how happy that makes obviously that makes me and whatnot. If the board hasn't seen this podcast that's come out over the last month called Solar Story, which is a crazy 6-part series put out by American Public Media on the challenges of literacy education in the country, and how exactly what Dr. H is talking about is and these kind of interventions is what we need to be doing. It's well worth everyone's time. It's really hard hitting and impressive. It's called Solar Story, and it just came out. The last episode actually drops tomorrow. It's like number 2 on Apple Podcast. It's huge. Mm-hmm.
And I just want to make sure to say, Kim Palladino, who's our coordinator, ELA coordinator. I mean, she is definitely assisting in spearheading this, and I want to give her credit in running our weekly meetings and, being part of this. So
Thank you. Ms. Downey.
Thank you, Dr. H. Anyway, this is helpful, and I really think it's good for us to hear, monthly or period, however, whatever sequence we've got about what's going on. But here's a question, this is kind of, I don't know if it's more of a board question. We had that very comprehensive discussion of the PCG recommendations. And we're talking about which recommendations in here. Are we going to have at some point another comprehensive, like kind of, an action timeline of where we are on all the recommendations, kind of in a comprehensive format? And whether we want to do that with our February retreat, Kathleen, or it might, 'cause if we're going to have maybe, I don't know if it makes sense to do it mid-year or if you'd rather wait till the end of the year, but it feels like it would be good from a progress check to just kind of see, numbers 1 through 28 and where we are. 'Cause I know we did it at the start. I don't know what you have any thoughts on that?
absolutely. So I know that we had PCG come and do a reflection at the end of the year and kind of put us where we are. I think at our midterm would be a really, I try not, I'm conscious of not coming up and saying the same thing over and over. So that's why I just kind of picked specific recommendations, especially those that are that people have the most questions about. And that are really focused on student instruction, but I can definitely put that together and do that at the next one or the February one, whichever comes
I think
first.
the February meeting where we have dedicated, right, to special education. So I think that might be the appropriate time for the retreat.
Okay, Karen Hirsch has a question, I guess.
Well,
around that.
this leads me to the question that I had here, which is, I was actually, Michael asked the first question that I was going to ask about that. And then I know Christina my next question leads into what Christina was asking, which was, I was just curious, I know we've talked about some of the feedback that you've gotten from, the parents and students and teachers on the co-teaching model and, some of the other inclusion specialists that we have working with us and so forth. And I'm this is where we're going with or improvements, if we have any, when we're going to be seeing any of the growth, growth data in the testing and some of those co-taught versus non-co-taught classes, when because you're talking about measuring success. And I just didn't know how often we were reviewing that student growth and making adjustments in the program, when we might see some of that data, which would lead me to the question is when we might get the next update, sort of see where we're going.
Well, as we look at the programming, a lot of it is around the success is around specific students and progress toward their IEPs and being able to make progress in the general education classroom and the curriculum. So we would be getting our first year's worth of data this year with them being in the classrooms. And that would be something that we can track as we go forward. So right now it's really individual student based on are students meeting their IEP goals and objectives in the least restrictive environment, which is what we're charged with. And then looking at comparison data as we go forward.
You want to jump? No, so, and I understand that we won't have a full year's data at this point, but, I know we have to sort of make adjustments as we go along, which you do anyway, which I think you eloquently explained, even just when you're talking about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I know you do that even for students who are beyond that level of an intervention. So, I think our question would be at some point, just sort of looking at that data to see how well this is meeting the needs of our current students and if there's any adjustments that need to be made going forward, because I know even, you guys had said, even though it's a new program, it still needs to be refined as we move forward. And I'll let Mike jump in because he looked like he had an additional point.
Because I know we have you've established some metrics that come in next September.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess to Christina's point, maybe we can think about how we might be able to talk about that in February, how we're heading towards those metrics that we saw.
It is on the agenda for the board retreat, so it makes sense. Yes, Ms. Kowalski.
So with respect to the interventions and the multi-tiered support systems, I'm curious as to how students are selected or identified and then put into getting additional support, whether it's literacy support or math intervention support, and how that, one, how that process works, and two, is that the teacher reaching out to making a decision? Is it a team base that's making the decision? And how are parents being alerted?
So students are referred, so teachers make referrals to the MTSS team. So there's a team at each school that supports the process. So if a teacher sees that a student is struggling, that would trigger them to discuss the student with the team. There is parent notification, and in fact, Ms. Palladino and I and Dr. Carabillo as well are reviewing the letters that are currently sent out to see, are they explaining enough? Are they friendly enough? Because some of them are kind of a little formal. We've pulled them off of our system. So, you know, we do have letters that are going out, but we're working on consistency across schools and what those letters are. Because right now, there's a RTI system that has it, and some schools have individual letters. So we're working on that as part of the process. But the initial referral comes from the teacher who says, I see a student struggling in my classroom and the student needs some support. It also does come from some parents. I've had some parents reach out, and we've worked with the schools, and in terms of, this is what I'm seeing a decline, or I'm not seeing my student be able to do this at home. And so parents can make referrals as well in terms of not seeing that and having that conversation with the school.
So two follow-up questions. So what's the general time frame from when a teacher says, I'm seeing one of my students who's needing some additional support, until this team, the MTSS team reviews, until that child actually gets support? Because I'm finding, you know, that time period is critical, right? Is it a matter of a week? Is it a matter of a month? Because a month to a child in a school year is a lifetime. My second follow-up question is, if parents are reaching out saying, I'm seeing this, how come this isn't being done? Are we looking at that through the district to decide, was it our place as teachers did we miss something? Or is that parent being hypercritical of the achievements of their child? Because I've just gotten feedback from parents to say, my child isn't doing well. They agreed with me, but I had to make the call. Why are my teachers not being proactive enough? Or why isn't the school being proactive enough to identify, and why did I have to bring it to their attention? So the question, so that my follow-up, that's a long way of getting up to my follow-up question. Are we evaluating whether or not there was a lack of diligence on the part of the school system in order to identify that student? Or is this something that is just a hypersensitivity of a parent on how they're viewing their own child?
So to answer the first question, most schools have weekly MTSS meetings. So it's not months. So it is weeks in looking at the student data and being able to target what skill are we working on, and then being able to start providing services. I think that there's a combination of, there are some referrals that come through, and, you know, home behavior is not always the same as school behavior. And so I don't want to say a parent is hypercritical. What I see is that sometimes a student might struggle at home, or the teacher gave math is a good example. This is how you do it. A parent at home knows how to do it somewhat different. And there's a struggle, and it looks like maybe a student isn't as successful in a particular area. And sometimes it's working through things like that. I think of that with my own son going through school. But I also think that sometimes there are students that are on the borderline, and we want to give them support, but we might be starting to see, oh, they're catching on. And so it might not quite be a referral yet, but a parent might bring it forward. And it's like, yes, they were struggling a little bit, but they're on track. So I think it's a combination of both. We're always looking at how students are doing, and the more data points that we have, the easier it is to make that type of referral from the school. But the data teams that the schools, really look at how are students progressing, how can we, meet their needs. I had the opportunity last year to sit in a data team meeting over at New Lebanon and watching the teachers really discuss what are the needs of literacy of each of, I think it was third grade, and really how do we meet that? I mean, that they're doing that on an ongoing basis in all of our schools.
So is part of the data points, is that information through the Linkit tests and assessments that are given to children that they can see where is that part of what they're using, and what other data points are they using in order to bring to the MTSS committee?
So they're using that. They're using classroom-based assessment. Foundations has the unit tests at the end. So all of that data and looking at a student's progress. So maybe they have been successful in all the units, but maybe this unit they didn't have a good score on. That doesn't necessarily mean they need to go into an intervention. Maybe it is just reteaching that particular skill, and then they get caught back up.
But then we have universal screeners in place. So doesn't that automatically, I guess I'm confused now from what I'm hearing. My assumption is that there's certain student performance levels that would automatically trigger referral. The referrals aren't always anecdotal. They're not, or is that not the case? Like I guess what role is the universal, what Kathleen was, Karen was saying, what role is the universal screeners playing in the MTSS process?
Well, even with that, it's not one data point. It's still looking at that multiple data points, because you could have a bad day at school and not do well on that particular data point. So even with our screeners, we're still looking at multiple things. So maybe that particular past Linkit day even might not have gone well, but the student is mastering all of the work in the classroom, passing all unit tests in English, math, social studies, science. So you're saying that that's an outlier. So that's why we use multiple data points and not just one.
Ms. Costa.
So I wanted to ask about the inclusion specialist. Is it just one, or do we have more than one, or is this a hope we're going to get one, or can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. We have one. So this was part of the budget proposal from last year into this year. So her name is Rachel Rubin, and she works with our staff, both supporting the co-teaching, not just at the elementary, but also at the middle and high school level. And then she also supports some of our students with more significant needs and their time in the general education classroom, and working with the teachers to ensure that students are receiving appropriate instruction, curriculum level, and that we have high expectations for students in all levels. So she's really working with a variety of students and staff.
So across different buildings, grade levels, for
Yes.
multiple.
So she's K-12. Yes.
Ms. Downey.
Just one quick question. I know you mentioned, and you may have explained this before, and I apologize if I missed it, but why do we not have co-teaching in all the years at Western that we do have at Eastern and Central and at the high school?
So I can only speak for coming on last year. So Western's run a different model, and Gordon does a great job in providing support for the students at Western. So the model that they were using didn't employ co-teaching. As we started looking at some of the high school, specifically some of the high school classes that are available as students come from 8th grade to 9th grade, we realized that there were certain students that weren't accessing some of the higher classes because they were coming out of skills classes. And so we looked at doing some co-teaching in 8th grade so that we could make sure that they might be on an on-grade class with that support, so that they would have the opportunity for a different level of class going into the high school. So it's kind of like looking at where some of our students were, and that was one of the tasks from the PCG report, was looking at how do we get some of our special education students into more on-level or higher level classes. And when you kind of go back, some of it really comes out of 8th grade, especially in the area of math. And so that's why we targeted 8th grade, so that we could, make sure that we have, again, a continuum of options and that accessibility to our students.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Anything else? No? Okay. Oh, did you, Karen, or no? Okay.
Well, I was just going to say thank you. Because once again, we still have not, we have gotten positive feedback from the parents in the special education community on the great work that's being done. So I just wanted to add that additional thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Heiligenthaler.
Yes, you're getting there.
Nailed it. Okay. Yes. I'm going with nailed it. Okay. I'm taking a victory lap on that one. Okay, next up. Oh, I love this topic. Board of Education meeting calendar. Dr. Jones.
I will say this calendar, really, I give the credit to Mike who worked on this, Antonaccio. But we did mirror what we had this year because it seems as though the board has liked the retreat meetings where we've been able to really dig in more on curriculum than we have in the past. And really talk more about what happens out in the classroom. So
Wait, is everyone leave? Thank you so much. We didn't thank the whole team. Sorry about that. We should have said thank you and appreciate all of you being here. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Go home so you can teach tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, sorry, you can go back again, Dr. Jones now.
I'm sorry. No, I'm just saying credit goes to Mike who worked on this for us, but it does model what we did this year because it seems as though the retreat structure has been working really well where we've been able to dig in and, talk more about, I think, curriculum and instruction, which is something the board wanted to be able to do.
Yeah, I just have one issue. And that is, I really liked going to different schools. And I know that I was going to say, how many of you were actually on the board when we did that? Okay, yeah. I mean, I know that we used to, predates, I know some members of my caucus, because we used to go to different restaurants around town where we'd caucus before. And I even felt like I got to know different areas of the town as a result, which was just really lovely. And while I love Central Middle School, I think it would change the technical quality. So the biggest issue, it seems, would be presenters, right?
So if you think about it, even when we were at Cos Cob, it was a little bit more difficult for me when we got ready to present the budget than it is here. It's just like a well-oiled machine here. And we have so many people, depending on the topic, that want to dial in now. That really is, that's the challenge. And in some buildings, you don't have the big screen. I don't know if you noticed at Cos Cob, it was pretty tiny, even compared to what we have here. So if we have a large audience, it's just.
I just wonder if we could be almost strategic about marrying the topics or something with the schools, and so heavier items we do here, but when it's.
I was also going to add, I agree with you, just the opportunity for principals and students to show up their schools, and the things that are happening in those classrooms. And it gave an opportunity, not just for us as board members, but members of the community to see what's happening in our schools and see the schools themselves, and oftentimes realize why we have so many facility requests.
Okay, Karen, and then Michael Joseph.
Can I make a suggestion on that? Well, I don't disagree with anything that's been said. Perhaps one of the things that we can consider then is for our board retreats to take those at different schools. Obviously, it's not open to the same type of environment as it is for an entire, regular business meeting. But that would allow us to go to a different school without having some of the technical disadvantages, because normally we do them at Havmeyer. So to move around to schools, it gives us as a board an opportunity to take a tour around the school before we sit down. And that kind of gives us the best of all worlds, because then for the board meeting, for a business meeting such as this, we have a bigger auditorium and all of the technical advantages.
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea. I wish it was more than 5, but it's a good idea.
Well, I was also gonna say.
Right. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say with the retreat, just that's, we have so much more staff that's there, which is why we usually do them at Havemeyer, I think. That's, I mean, it was technically, I think, why we've consistently done them there.
Right. Okay, Michael Joseph and then Christina.
So, this wasn't what I was really gonna say, but the only worry I'd have about that suggestion is that the nature of the retreat meeting changes. Less, I'd be cautious about tacking on 15 minutes to retreat meeting for this, for the principal of the building to give a presentation and things like that, and then suddenly it feels more like a business meeting. So I think
I'm not suggesting.
I know, I
A
just-
presentation. I'm
Right.
just suggesting an opportunity for you to arrive 10 minutes earlier and take a
Sure.
tour around the school.
So I don't know if it's a typo, so, or if I have it, Dr. Jones, I know on the yellow page, it says 3 retreats and a capital summit. And then on the board itself, and then on the calendar, there's 5 board retreats. I'm assuming one of those is the capital summit.
Yes, and I think it was probably because it was originally a retreat this year before we changed it to Capital Summit. Yeah, so we would want to, we could retitle one of those.
So is that, and then, so is it 4 retreats and a capital summit? Or because the yellow page says 3.
Yes. Ms. Downey?
Actually, I'm going to mess with the math. I guess here's my question to my fellow board members. We added the Capital Summit this year for the first time, and I think it was very productive. But I can't remember how long our retreat the week before went and how people feel about 3 consecutive weeks meetings as opposed to taking the 2 retreats and combining them into one. I'm just throwing it out there for discussion that, 1 longer meeting instead of 2 shorter meetings. Just an idea. Cody's giving big nods.
Well, on top of that, a number of the things we do at the meetings are actually not very substantive. So by having a longer meeting, you can cut things that are not action items.
Well, no, but this would be, they're both, I'm saying combined retreats. We don't have action items at retreats anyway.
Yeah, I just mean, even so, like, there are things that we can do that reduce the amount of time necessary for some of the things that we cover at those retreats, like the great videos that get posted and you can watch them in your free time. So I'm saying I agree with you. I like the idea of condensing.
I was
and-
just throwing it out.
Yeah.
I could be persuaded either direction.
I
Just-
would say personally, it depends on the topic of the board retreat, because if you're focusing on, for instance, one of them is a budget, a budget focus, the other one would be data focused, or, like you don't want to start combining. The reason that we have those retreats is that we can take a deeper dive and have a longer opportunity to have conversation. And I know people want to get in and out, but this is our job. This is our role, is to ask those questions and do so in these types of formats. So.
Well, to add to that, sorry, our job is to have a maximum impact on student outcomes, not to just talk for the sake of talking. And that's oftentimes what happens at those meetings. So I'm just in favor of doing things that push us to be more efficient with our time, because just getting together and talking when the words don't change any outcomes or change any choices is not time well spent.
I personally think less is more.
I'm just saying the reason we did the capital summit is we'd never done the capital budgeting process this way. And so I think we all weren't really sure how it was going to evolve. Again, this is just the notion that, if you look at what we did on our agenda on September 8th and then
Right.
capital, and obviously we could look back at the tape and see how long September 8th ran. But if it was short, I think that
I know,
the
Yeah.
capital one was very productive. So,
I would argue
Yes.
that, yeah, I like the capital too. I wonder if is that September 14th? So we're all saying, right? It's
I
September
think we're
14th.
guessing it would be the same time frame as this year.
So September 14th is the capital. I guess I'm wondering if we need a retreat on both the 7th and the 5th.
Hence my point.
Exactly. I'm
So maybe we
confirming,
strike
I'm
the
confirming
seventh.
your pick.
The question is what the topics would be.
Well,
One
I
of them,
think-
the one you're talking about from this year in September was almost 3 hours, but we were talking all about academics and curriculum, and it arguably is rather important topic,
Well,
not
do
just
we,
budget.
we don't have
September 8th.
the agenda obviously yet for the policy committee hasn't worked on that yet.
No.
23, 24.
Seems a little early. in the
Seems a little
year.
early. Why don't we take, look, this is just a discussion, right? So we could, maybe policy can look at it, or we could continue to bring it back at the next meeting, where we marry a little bit of what's on each generally. I know we're not going to plan, but generally, if we look back and see if these dates with the topics serve
So-
us well.
So
But-
we're going to talk more about talking less.
Exactly. No, I'm going, but I really do think we need that's sort of administrative work / policy work. So I don't think we need to spend time on that. What I do think we need to fundamentally decide on is location. Because that's something as a group that really matters. And I love how we have, 22 people right now still listening, who aren't here. So that's very important. And sometimes that number is a lot higher. But so I do think it's really important for, especially for parents who are putting their children to sleep, that they can listen. For our presenters, I'm a little bit less concerned about that admittedly, because it seems like our volunteers are willing to show up. Steve Walco, people along those lines, the architects. I know there were some additional people that were from the architectural firm tonight, but if they're presenting, I think it's worth the effort. So if we're going to reduce the quality a little bit, the quality of the technology, quality, for us visiting the schools again, because again, I've had that experience more than you guys have. It was really fantastic. And I think it's something that we should consider bringing back. COVID changed that. And I do think that it's something we should really talk about.
But don't you think, I mean, I think it's good to go to all the schools, but isn't it even better to find means to do so during the school day? I just feel like if we, as a board, kind of take initiative, the same way, going to school on the first days and really put out to principals to invite it, because we do get invited to a lot of events, or maybe put a school a month on a rotation, like whatever, first Friday of the month is our day if we want to go visit a particular school. I think there's a way to institutionalize going to the schools during the school day that could be vastly more interesting and productive.
Right. Okay, Cody, because you haven't had a chance to speak on that.
I visited all 15 schools last spring by myself, with tours of the principals, and it was great. I think I found it, Tony was super helpful in setting it up, and all the principals were really welcoming. So I think we're mixing two things. One that's really nice, like getting to go to the schools is great, but you can do that on your own time, and it's better when they're in school. And if it's easier for the administration to do it here, I think, it's like corporate board meetings. It's fun if they're in the Bahamas, but it's maybe not like super, necessary. So I would keep it simple and keep it here. And then everyone should go visit the schools regularly. You get so much information out of seeing it. I really valued it.
That's a good point. Okay, so here's another idea. Maybe we have a principal come to each one of these meetings here. And so then we get because there was something where you'd go to Riverside and the principal will tell you a little bit about Riverside and show you like a 2-minute video of what the kids were doing there. There's something about, we have 15 schools that have different feel, right? They have a different culture. And yes, you're right. It's great if you could visit during the day. That's not easy for everyone to do. But if we can maybe instead keep it here at Central, keep the technology, and then have a principal sort of have each day is sort of dedicated to a different school. That's maybe a hybrid approach. Okay, Karen?
Well, I think the reason that this is a discussion topic tonight versus not an action is maybe we go back and ask the principals how they feel about that. Only in the fact that we have two of our, teacher representatives here. And I know Cody had the opportunity to visit all the schools. I've had that opportunity too, but showing up, even if it's pre-planned oftentimes during the day, that, we're taking time away from what our principals and others are doing, and disrupting some of the learning environment by coming in and out of classrooms. So I think it's great, but it doesn't always work. And it also doesn't give the public and other members opportunity to see the schools. But I would say, I think we can also ask the principals if they, how they feel about visiting the school versus coming here. Again, to me, it's being in that school. The kids have an opportunity oftentimes to before the meeting, sang or they had their orchestra, select members visiting, it just was a great opportunity to show off all of our schools and the work that's being done there. But that's just a,
Trade. Yep. Okay. Sorry. Cody?
I do like your idea of making a regular discussion item, like a little a principal presenting an overview of their school. It's kind of like our division presidents coming in and telling us what's going on. I think that's something we should evaluate more.
Thank you. Okay. So maybe, and then perhaps a good compromise, right? Because then we achieve what we need, but we still have the technology. I don't know. Joe, you were going to say something before. What do you think? Okay. All right. Well, this isn't a vote, but I think that maybe that's how we could think about keeping everything here, having each, date sort of dedicated to one of our 15 schools, and then the change in September. Take off a meeting, right? Okay. All right. Great. Next is Central Middle School update. Dr. Jones, I can't imagine you have more to add, do you?
I do not.
Great. Western Middle School soil update. I pray that you have more to add.
Well, there was a really good meeting today. So it was the first meeting with AECom and Langen partnering up with the, DEEP and EPA. We'll have to wait and get, the update follow-up. You always have follow-up after that meeting, but Dan Watson was there, said it was a very positive meeting. So we're thrilled to have this larger team now, which is the next step, because I know I've mentioned this to the board. AECom actually did the bid process, scoring process for the high school soil remediation. So they'll help us get ready and moving in that direction as well.
Where's the whole wrap thing?
That actually is sitting at the state.
Okay. I mean, I am getting a lot of calls from some of our state representatives that are extremely frustrated, and it's going to be hard to hold them back anymore. Well, because there's some thought that you're only going to make them angry.
But at this point, I mean, it sounds like we're in the same place we were last month, right? And waiting for the state.
I feel like it's better. And Dan, you're welcome to, if you want to chime in, you were at the meeting today. If you have anything to add that might be helpful. I know we can't say a lot because we're waiting, but it was a positive meeting. And I think that was the takeaway today. They felt like they were stepping forward.
Yeah. So, yeah, the meeting today was probably the most positive meeting I have had with not only Langen, but the regulators from the state. It felt like everybody was pushing the project forward. The next hurdle is to have the public meeting. We haven't got the 100% approval on that yet, but we're very close. I think we're going to hear something by the end of the week. Whether or not we can do that. What's that? Right. So, it was a positive meeting today. So I think we're on the right road. And as far as, getting people to make phone calls, what they're going to hear is these people are understaffed big time. And I don't know if they want to hear from the people who may have cut their budgets. So let's be careful with it.
Okay, give it to Thanksgiving. Cody. Okay. Anybody else on this topic? No? Okay, then let's move to budget transfers, please.
Hey, I'm on here. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Yep. Budget transfers. There's only one. It's informational and it's before you. So it was one transfer of $14,000. Anybody have any questions?
I don't see any. Can we move to financial and staffing? Okay, go right next to the next one.
Okay, financial and staffing report, pretty routine. We're still early in the fiscal year. Things are on track. You can see the summary of where we're at. Capital, we added in the information I think that some of the folks were looking for in there, as well as the ARP money. We have a current open balance, total including the building committee capital of 46.6 million. The food services budget, we are monitoring very closely. We meet every month. Actually, we're meeting twice a month right now. They are on track. They still have the free lunch federal funding program. They've got you'll see about $286,000 left. That should get them through, as we put in the report, free lunch through early December, and then we'll be out of that SMART funding. And we're also meeting with Dr. H's team, SESS team, on a bi-weekly basis to monitor financials. And we're still in much better shape than what I am told is this time in many years for special education, thanks to a lot of the work she's doing. And so it's a current budget deficit all in. Her office has been really good about encumbering the funds as early as possible to make sure that we know all exposures. And so they're about negative. They're running a deficit of about 453,000, but that's still significantly less than last year's budget exposure. Other than that, everything's pretty straightforward. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Can I ask about the reduced lunch amounts, so the free lunch? So that's ongoing. And once we get to zero, or basically going to ask the children to start paying again?
That is correct.
Okay, do we have a sense for, imagine we're figuring it out what the daily clip is. So you think that's going to take us to January?
No, that is gonna run out in early December.
Okay, so have we sort of communicated that?
Yes, I see Dr. Jones nodding her head. Yes, they put it out a few newsletters.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. That's important.
And they've been pushing, that's why they've been pushing, the schools and the principals have been pushing the students that aren't directly certified to make sure that they certify.
Great.
And this is the federal funding that was extended through Congress, and it was a dollar amount, and it's basically, you have it until you run out. So our burn rate on that funding, with the way we're going, will take us to, originally we were looking at November, but it should take us through the early December.
Out of curiosity, how did we fare versus other districts? Have some already hit zero?
I do not believe so, and the state's actually a little bit behind on reporting. I don't think anybody has, but I can double check for you.
Okay, it's just, whatever. It's not important. I was just intrigued. Okay, yes, Karen.
So I think this would be also a question for Dr. H too, Tony, but I'd be curious to see, given all of the things that we have implemented and additional programs we've put into place concerning special ed after the PCG report, I'm wondering if we're actually seeing a dollar sign difference in respect to our out-of-district tuition and settlement prices, understanding that this number is better than what we've seen in years past. Obviously, looking at the budget book, I think there's an additional 1.5 million, and don't quote me on that one, for 2023-24 school year with respect to out of placements. And I'm just wondering if there's a way that we're tracking if we're actually doing better by the additional funds that we're putting into special education through the advancements of the programs we've created because of PCG versus the output and settlements. Like, are we seeing a return on value on our money spent there?
I think we definitely are. And at the budget meeting, she'll be able to talk about it a little bit because you're talking about very unique cases and small numbers of students in the executive session that we've been doing each year. You'll get far more information, but we definitely are seeing that it's helping families be able to choose to stay in the district. And we also have some families that are coming back to the district. So that's been great to see as well.
Yeah, I think it'd just be curious to see how we're tracking on those numbers, because if we are regularly seeing a decrease in this amount of money, that's a really good and positive way, and something that we should consider in saying whether or not there's other investments we can make through special ed that we may see a bigger return on value coming back into the district because we don't have so much on outplacements.
Right. Okay. Any other questions for Blaze? Okay, thank you so much, Blaze.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, great. Let's move to action items again. Strategic plan goals. Is this Dr. Joseph or Michael Joseph? Who's presenting this? Oh my gosh. Okay. Kelly, I need help. Yeah.
Oh, so I think Dr. Jones is Mr. Amico are presenting, but I think I have to make a motion.
You do.
This on the table. So I would like a motion to approve the strategic plan goals statement before the board.
Would anyone on the committee like to second that? Ms. Hirsch. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jones.
So the committee met last Friday and and one piece that they asked for us to go back and look at again was goal 6. And so what you saw that was posted or is in front of you is an update to goal 6. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. I do want to also point out that on the top of the 1-page document where it says GPS strategic plan, that's the way it was the last time you saw it. You'll notice it was titled on here differently, where it's strategic goal. And so we can change the title of that if that's the feedback that the board wants to actually change from GPS strategic plan and use the strategic plan goals. And then the other item would be the stretch goal. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention when I was at the Alliance and spent about an hour with them. And one of the concerns they had was the stretch goal at 100% for reading. And I told them that several of you agree with that, that they felt like you're automatically setting yourself up to not be able to reach the goal. So it is a difference in philosophy. So that's something for the board to consider. Do we want to stay with that stretch goal so high? And it mainly is the reading goal, I think, where there's probably the most concern when we talk about a stretch goal. I'm not sure. It's pretty rare for any school district to have 100%. They almost have a system that doesn't allow it. So on goal 6, if I can just, we did, Karen, I know you worked on it. I'm not sure. I think maybe both of the Karens worked on it a little bit today. And Mike does have that and he's brought it up. I think, is it behind us? I have an extra copy to hand out. So this was just a suggested, very quick edit from today to try to tighten the language up. So we're open to suggestions on the goal 6. Again, it was more about the language than anything else. We had it more focused from a staff perspective on climate for teachers. And this is a little bit more focused on also making sure we're enhancing their professional learning to maximize student outcomes. So I'm going to pass around the sheet if you don't already have it.
While you're passing that out, I had pointed out, and I know Dr. Jones and or Mr. D'Amico, you guys made an update. Something fell off between the last iteration and this iteration. Under the reading and math goals, the sentence about students making their individual growth goals for APTA accidentally fell off from along with your microphone from the last iteration to this iteration. So that should be back in there. And I know you said Mr. D'Amico was updating that at some point too.
He actually has it updated already for us.
Yay.
Okay. Did you want Mr. D'Amico to add anything or should we start asking questions? Right, Karen, did you want to add anything? I know Michael Joseph started, but I'd love your perspective as committee members.
Sure, I'll add a couple of things. So I've spoken about this before and I was probably one of the stronger voices with respect to the committee on goal 6. Goal 6 as it read currently and not with the suggested edit. I don't find it, I think it's an excellent goal. Don't get me wrong. I think obviously having happy and happy, well-rounded and teachers is a good thing to have in your classrooms with your students. However, I struggle to find it in this particular strategic plan as opposed to a broader goal within Tony's own, Dr. Jones's own goals, as well as perhaps an administrative goal. Because I find it hard to link this as a teacher climate component with the vision of the graduate. I think it could be further tweaked even more, as Karen and I were talking earlier today, to something so simple as, promoting and support innovative and exemplary research based upon professional practices in order to continuously enhance teaching and extended learning. This is something that we pulled from another strategic plan from a peer district. And that would be something I would be comfortable with. The current wording of this, I find, is more of happy teachers as opposed to teachers that are more looking into, professional based practices that help our students. So I struggle with that. The second aspect of this that I struggle with, and I had voiced this as well, as well, I think goals 2 and 3 are great. I have reservations that it doesn't provide enough support or a plan to enhance for those students that aren't achieving this particular goal, as to what happens with those students and how are we going to address the needs of our most challenged and vulnerable learners. And that's why I have concerns about these particular goals, that they don't specifically address those children that are in the, that aren't hitting those marks. And we originally, I think we said we were just adding back in that language. I'm concerned and that doesn't provide enough for those students. I think it was a state-based standard, and I know Greenwich has always been very strong on our particular standards, that we were higher than the state. And so I wonder if that is sufficient enough, and if we are happy enough that for those purposes. So again, I don't like goal 6. I've never liked goal 6. I've said that before when we've brought this here, and I don't believe goals 2 and 3 address all of our students well enough to make sure that we are providing enough support for our most vulnerable learners.
Ms. Hirsch?
I know we've talked about this at the committee, and yes, I had spoken with Karen earlier and tried to help bridge the gap to where all of our committee members and our administration and staff who were have provided a lot of input into this. And one of the main things I distinctly remember from our first meeting of the original strategic plan committee before we had some changeover, was talking about school climate, particularly for educators, and making sure that educators had that input. And I mean, I know Michael Joseph and I are big fans of reading through all the latest educational research, and as are many others. But there's countless studies and documents talking about how providing that positive school climate and culture, not just for our students, but for our staff, leads to increases in academic achievement. And so that's why I personally think it belongs here, but I realize that also the way it was worded and the way it was focused was not leading itself back to that, which is why I had helped sort of try to, was not leading itself back to how that also affects the positive nature of our academics. So that was why I was working on that. But I will also second Karen's statement. One of the things we've talked about specifically is making sure that these are SMART goals, making sure that we are addressing all of our students' needs. I've had concerns with 100% since we started, because I don't want to set ourselves up for failure. You'll always have an outlier on the positive end of things and on the other ends of things as well. And I think that's something to discuss. But I know that we've talked about having SMART goals. We've talked about having different things built in here. But I think I know within our committee, the discussion was to put some of those back-ended pieces in once these goals are approved, right? And so that piece is coming, and it is, and I think we are also, as a committee, we are getting all the SIP plans from every single school, the school improvement plans from all of our schools to look through those. There's a lot of that data and information in those plans, but they have recently been posted, so we're getting those to look at too. But again, like Karen, to me, I want to make sure that we're addressing, the needs of all of our students, not just those who've been here for 5 years, not those just who are hitting those goals. It's what do we do and how do we focus on the students that aren't meeting those goals and how do we get there? And that's a discussion for another date. But if these are the goals we feel are proper as a board, I think that we as a committee and the incredible administrative team and our staff that will be the ones doing the work will put in that work to get those goals, make them SMART goals and put that in, because we do need to know who's accountable for different pieces, and what marks we're going to hit when.
Did you guys take a vote in the committee on this plan? So it's not like a 3-0-2-1. I mean, you're not making a recommendation to the board. Okay, Michael Joseph.
So I have a comment, but Dr. Jones, would you mind, it might make sense to clarify with goals 2 and 3, the idea of that individual student metric that we're talking about for all students. I wonder if you could clarify what that metric is in the state, because it's a growth metric. So
Yeah, it is a growth metric, and I'm sorry it dropped off of this version. It was on the one we saw last month. And it's actually every individual student. You're not trying to hit as a state target, as in we always know we're going to hit the state target. It literally has a metric for every single student in the state of Connecticut, and it's new, yes. So if a student is at the 94th percentile, they are still expected to see growth, be well above what just a state average would be. But again, it's a growth metric for every single student, and along with that, I would say you really have to look beyond even just the 2-pager and look at the strategy sheet. And it kind of goes along with what Dr. Heiligenthal was talking about earlier. If you look at the reading one, one of the strategies that we have on reading, and it's almost at the very bottom, is the MTSS. It drills down again to interventions for every single student, from everything from your math interventionist, your reading interventionist, all of the different interventions that we've been putting in place and we are continuing to put in place. So it really does drill down for students. And the growth metric is, again, something that it's individualized. And there aren't very many states that actually have that.
But we took it out because it was in there, or no, it's like.
It accidentally dropped off this version. We've already
Okay.
put it back in.
Okay, got
Somebody
it, got it.
pointed it out today. Yes.
So under goals number 2 and number 3, it says, in addition to every student, it was a sentence that said, in addition to every student will make their individual growth, which is the APTA. And that was the piece that had fallen off.
Cody, I saw that you had your hand raised. Did you want to say something?
Can someone walk me through this sense of belonging concept? Like, just when I talk to parents or students or anyone about schools, I never hear anybody say like, oh, what really matters to me is the sense of belonging. Like, reading, writing, math, those are on the list, but can someone explain that to me?
This really is about, is the student connected to their school? And, there's a lot of research that shows every student needs to be connected to an adult in the school environment. And sense of belonging is actually where it comes from, the old Panorama survey, and the Panorama survey used that. And so it's part of the metric that we've been using for a couple of years. We don't use the Panorama survey anymore. We have our own. It's much shorter. We're getting a higher rate of return on it, but that's where the phrase comes from. And it's really about, do the students enjoy, coming to school? Do they feel like they have the support that they need? How do they feel about their school environment from a student perspective? And it is really important, because the last thing you want is a student who doesn't want to come to school, and then by the time they're 14 and 15, we're in a school avoidance situation. So we use that survey data every year.
If I may,
Oh, yes. Go ahead. I can't see you down there.
just on, we didn't tilt the tables, but we'll do it next time. Cody, just a personal example of something like that. As a coach, what we do is we try to teach not just the X's and O's or the push-ups and sit-ups and how to pass the ball, but a lot of times we suggest something to do to help the school community. And one of the things we would say sometimes to do is to find a kid sitting by themselves in the cafeteria and sit with them. So I don't know if that kind of falls into the application of what kind of sense of belonging is, but there are those kids that sit by themselves in the cafeteria. And so there's probably, I'm assuming my small part of contributing into the education system addressed that. I assume that that it's done on a larger scale in the school, and I wasn't told to do that. That was something we just did, and I assumed everyone did that. So having somebody that does that, I can see the value in it, but also I can understand that the environment that the schools have present that and do that.
Michael Joseph, you wanted to add something?
Well, if you permit, I think it's important for us to remember, particularly for folks listening and different stakeholders, what the strategic plan is. Right. So what this is attempting to do is set some metrics into place that if we meet these metrics, we will have more fully realized the vision of the graduate for each individual student here who attends our public school system. And the vision of the graduate is academic success, but it's also character and confidence and all these other strong traits that citizenship that we value here as a community, has been part of the tradition of Greenwich for a very long time. This document, which I think is really exciting, this document is really meant to be our North Star, right? So when we started this process back this winter, we adopted this idea of stretch goals. And we know stretch goals are big, audacious, and not, and a little different than a SMART goal. We want stretch goals to really stretch our staff, to stretch each other, and to challenge ourselves. And that's why you see numbers like 100%. And I would challenge us not to think of this as, well, if we say 99%, we'll be more likely to make this goal and things like that. But really, the idea behind hanging this as our North Star is we want this for every student. It is our moral imperative to try to do that for every student. So let's do that. So let's make this our goal. In 2027, is some future board member, smart aleck board member going to say, you only got 99%, shame on you. Well, we'll cross that bridge. I think the argument right now is that we put these goals out there as our North Star, and we make sure that there's something in there for every student. And that's why I think those stretch goals are those growth metrics are very important in goals 2 and 3. So I want to make sure that we all understand that. And then the other thing to understand is that one of the reasons why on the agenda this is changed to a goals document is, while, as Dr. Jones pointed out here, there was a lot of details here about the plan and how we're starting to work towards this. Those details very much represent this year. Over the course of the 5-year plan, we've purposely laid out this process to be iterative, such that there is going to be subsequent documents and future work by the leadership team and by the staff, with oversight from the board, to flesh out the strategies in the future. And I think that we'll see that in subsequent documents. I think the important thing, though, particularly because we have the important thing, though, is to set the goals, right? To set that North Star so that we can begin to more fully develop that plan. Because the train in some ways has left the building, and that the buildings have started planning on this. We know this work is ongoing, but I think we need to, and in some ways we need to honor that. But more importantly, I think it's very important that we set those high standards that I think this document really sets for us.
Ms. Downey, then Ms. Hirsch.
I agree. I think with Michael, the notion of having the goals, I kind of will separately just go back to the process of how we're going to move this along, because a goals document is not a strategic plan. So I think you could explain what the plan for the strategic plan is after I'm done. I'm happy to hear that the individual goals are back in. I have a fundamental issue of choosing 100% goal that we know we're not going to. I don't like having a goal that we know we're not going to hit. It just seems as it bothers me. I'd rather put it in the 90s or something like that, which shows a committed ability that we really want to get as many students as possible. But we know we're never going to get 100. So why are we putting in there? So to me, it doesn't make sense.
I don't know that we know that we're never going to get 100. And I don't think we should say that to, one student or the other and things like that. If we know that if a student has been here for 4 years, has been working with us, we should most definitely be doing, we get that student on grade level. And if not, I think we need to talk about it. And we got 5 years to figure that out.
There are factors outside of our control that we don't control I don't know. I'd be okay with 99. I'm just saying that's my own personal view. But I'd like to hear about what the process you've got planned. So at some point, we're going to vote and approve this goals document in some form, right? It's a goals document. So then how do we create and craft a strategic plan from that? Because it sounds like the administration is more about the tactical, right? Because they're the educators, the professional educators, you aside, the rest of us on the board. But then how do we kind of go up to the kind of the higher level strategic plan portion of it?
So one of the things that we've been doing on the committee that continues to be the ongoing work, and I'd like to suggest it becomes the work of the board, maybe in February retreat and things. I know that's the next agenda item. We've adopted some of the tools from improvement science, and one of the more effective ones is this idea of a driver diagram. And what the driver diagram has is it started in healthcare, but it's been used in a lot in schools. And the idea of the driver diagram, if this is the goal, what are the key drivers of that goal? And what are the sub-drivers of that goal? And then from that, where are the change ideas come from? So let me give you just a quick example, because that was a lot, and we have to talk a lot about that. But I do think that that's the way forward, and how that becomes, that becomes the homework for the next meeting and things like that. But I think that's how we kind of flesh this out, because we've set the North Star, right? We set these goals, and we have some actionable strategies going on in the meantime. But we really have to take a look at what are the core drivers. For example, if we're looking at reading growth, right? One drive, of course, is that early elementary phonics decoding and things like that. And we know, for example, a change idea from that is the current foundations work that we're doing. But another driver would be late elementary and fluency and comprehension work and things like that. So what are the change ideas supporting that driver, for example? So fleshing out the drivers behind the goal and then the action items behind that. Some of that is the board work. Most of that is the work of the leadership team. In that I think we can identify some of the drivers with the help of the leadership team, and then with conjunction with the district leadership and our building leaders, that's when we start really talking about and identifying. So if these are the gaps in our drivers to achieve these goals, what can be the change ideas? And that's where we rely on the experts in the field. So I would argue that's kind of the process, the next step. If the first step was this idea of a stretch goal, and the root causes of that, which is what led to these stretch goals, then the next step is identifying the drivers and the change ideas behind them. That makes sense.
Joe.
I'm just going to go back a second and make a comment. You can't teach everyone how to read. Back to the 100% point.
I have to tell you, I'm not going to vote with something with 100% reading goal. And it's not realistic. It's like saying a company is going to hit earnings every time for perpetuity or something. I think it's unrealistic, and it's hard for me to vote for something that's unrealistic. But I guess I'd love to hear from Karen and Karen, since you guys didn't take a vote in the committee, are you guys supporting this?
Well, I will just jump ahead and say, we discussed it at our last meeting, and we had gotten the updated version of it yesterday. So we haven't had the opportunity to discuss a couple of the changes, which is why Karen and I spoke this morning and sort of tried to recraft something. I've been saying since day one, I don't want to set our educators up for failure. If you set them up at 100% and we don't hit that, you're going to have board members in a few years asking us very specifically why you can't get there. I will say specifically with things like reading, you will always have at least a few outliers. You're going to have students who we haven't discovered that have learning differences, and to try to force the students that are moving at a different pace with different needs that we may not know about into that, it makes me uncomfortable just to hit a goal. And so that's why I said, to me, I'm good with 99% because there's always going to be that 99 is still an incredible North Star, but you know, I would be hesitant in that regard. So, you know, I know we have a couple of fundamental differences on the idea of what goals lead to the vision of the graduate. But that being said, I mean, to me, the biggest piece of this that we need to get to is what we have built in behind to get us to those goals. And I think we need to do that sooner rather than later. And until the board approves the goals, it makes it a little more difficult. But I will say that school strategic plans are addressing a lot of these goals already.
I don't think we need to split hairs here. I mean, if the consensus of the board is 99 over 100, I don't think that's worth sinking the document.
Karen, Karen Kowalski, were you in favor of this plan or no?
I like most of this plan. And I've said that from the very beginning. I have a true hang up with one of the goals, and I've said that earlier, and that hasn't changed. I think I've said it before, I'll say it again for the last time. I think it's a great goal. I think it's misplaced here, and I have a hard time looking at this from a vision of the graduate component in worrying about teacher climate in this document. I think it's really important. I think we need to focus on it. Teacher climate is really low. I also think teacher climate is really low just because of the given of the politics over the last several years, COVID. We have a lot of things against us with respect to teachers. And so therefore, for those purposes, I was not going to vote yes. I had still sitting here whether it's an abstention or a no, but that's where I'm at on that. I have reservations and I need to think more deeply about whether or not the individual student metric is sufficient enough for purposes of our most vulnerable learners in goals 2 and 3. So I have reservations about that. I've been very vocal in our meetings about that. So these comments are not coming out of left field for anyone who has sat in those meetings or for those that I've talked to about my concerns with respect to this document.
Can I ask a question, Karen? With the suggested edits to goal 6, does that change your position? Just to understand it.
To be honest, Christina, I mean, I saw this 20 seconds when I sat down, so I haven't had a time to truly process it in the rest of the meetings. So I can't answer that question.
So can I make a suggestion? Since it seems like you didn't take a vote in your committee and typically like you policy, they come to us and they say, we're suggesting this or we're not, and then kind of gives the board a sense of what to do. That you meet again and that perhaps some of these revisions, and then you tell us, I mean, if it's 2-1, fine. If it's 1-2, fine. Then we'll bring it back to the board. Go ahead, Karen.
So I'll leave it to Michael to respond on that. I don't want my particular hangups to distract. If the rest of the board is ready to vote, given maybe a specific change with respect to 100 to 99, I don't want to stall the board anymore because I have a particular hangup. If the rest of the board is content with where we've gotten and on this document, which I think a lot of hard work has gone into this document, not just by those of us in the committee, but specifically with Dr. Jones's administration and putting that together, which should not go without saying. So I'm going to make sure that I say that tonight, that a lot of work has gone into this and getting here. And I think that needs to be recognized. So I don't want my personal hang up in how I view that goal, which again, as I've said, and I'll say it one more time, a great goal, wrong place. Because I don't want to slow down the process. And I understand, as Dr. Jones has said before, that the team and the schools are already working to achieve this. So we're not slowing it down in the sense that no work is being done. But again, I don't want to slow down this board. So I think maybe a consensus needs to be taken or a viewpoint, and I'll let Michael speak to that. Because I'm not going to change my mind on that tonight.
They, right, I suspect, we can certainly come back to the committee. I suspect we're gonna end up, having a little bit of rehash of the conversation we had. It might be good, maybe what might be good, because this is now the third, time we've brought it to the full board. I don't know if we can get a sense of the meeting, or, if we need to just delay and have, yeah, go ahead.
I feel like this is the most substantial discussion we've had on it. While it may be the third time we're hearing it, no, because we're not doing it at 11:30 at night, might have some impact on that.
It's actually 10. There's.
No, I
apparently our
said it's
clocks-
not
I know,
11:30.
Our clocks are wrong here.
No, I know it's an hour, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like this is the most productive discussion, like, while technically a third look. I feel like last month it was barely a look. It was kind of like a non-look. So I don't know if we can really say, because it's been before us, but like, this is a robust, thoughtful discussion. So for what it's worth, if the committee thinks it can be streamlined and productive to go back to it, otherwise, if we say, well, but the problem a little bit I have is that we're talking about voting on something with that not in the form that we should be, like, the thing that's getting added back in on individual growth. And we're talking about things getting, we're wordsmithing in the middle of a meeting, which I never like to do if all possible. So I'd rather see a clean version of it for another meeting. To me, I think that's preferable, but one person's view.
Just one
Yeah.
last comment. Mike, didn't you mention that this document is not written in stone? It could evolve as time goes on with more decisions?
The plan, the goals and the metric, aspect, they're pretty stony. But yeah, the strategies to meet there, evolve. Mhm.
Ms. Costin?
What if you think of a new goal? Are you allowed to add new goals?
Maybe in year 6 from the next version of this strategic plan, when there's too many priorities, none of them becomes a priority. So I'd worry about that.
Yeah, and I'll just start by saying that while this is 6, I think originally we started off at like 10. And then we said that is just, it's unrealistic and unfocused, and it needed to be more, for lack of a better word, strategic.
So with the permission of the chair, then maybe we'll take the I will withdraw my motion. And we'll make sure that there's a clean copy for next month, and maybe the strategic plan, maybe the committee will go back one more time here.
Yeah,
Let's get
and
it
I
done.
would suggest that I think you heard loud and clear that 100% does not seem to be going to win the day, so.
So I'm
Yes,
just going to make
yes, sir.
one more plea, because Michael will set a date that works for us to be able to sit down and make this discussion so we can get it back on the next agenda. Well, whatever, the next agenda that we can put this on. The only member of the committee I know I particularly heard with feedback on this was from Christina. So please, for the rest of the members of our board, if you have feedback to share with us, we really do want your input, because this is something that is one of the biggest drivers of what we do here as a board, and as a school district. So please, please, please share your thoughts and opinions with us prior to us putting this in front of you guys again.
I am committed to sending you something with my views of the numbers. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Okay, please go. His son is sick. No. Right, exactly. I do not like that you're not supporting my strategic plan. Goodbye.
On that point, on your comments and numbers, to the extent that it takes too much effort to put everything into an email, I'm open to a phone call to walk through it, and I'm happy to get on a call, and I can arrange for, perhaps getting one or more of us. Sometimes it's easier just to walk through and have a conversation about something as opposed to trying to craft this email that goes, and whether or not, how long it takes us to see, and then ends up rendering more questions than originally posed. So I am committed to make myself available to the convenience of the board members that do have comments and want to walk through, because I do think it's important. I actually think that this is probably the most important thing we will do this year, is to finalize this.
And I'm happy to meet or discuss with anybody over
Yes.
a glass
Good
of
luck, Michael.
wine or
Joseph,
coffee.
I'm very sorry.
Mostly just coffee, but I think we all are.
All right. Yep, no problem. Understood. Okay. Yes. Oh, Laura Costin, that is so good. She is funny. Okay, moving to agenda planning, which now has a lot of importance. So the next meeting is the little thing called the budget meeting. And we need to focus, because I think we did a really good job focusing on capital, and we need to focus purely at that meeting on our very big, important operating budget. And also you're bringing the American Rescue Plan as well. Detail that's on.
Which is the reminder also that we should have all of our questions into Dr. Jones regarding the budget by Friday, right?
Friday, yes, I'm guilty of not doing that yet, so.
And I will say that I did have a very conversation with Blaze regarding my first set of questions, which he was very, got me some really good answers. So what I plan to do is I will get all of my questions in, and then I will also include the questions that I already asked, plus the answers, based upon the questions that I had asked, because I thought that was really informative in writing my further analysis of the budget.
And to that point, you'll see in the document, we had a bunch of questions at the budget committee meeting. So Dr. Jones put them into the document, and the answers that we discussed will be in the document.
Okay, so that's great. So for December 15th, I'm going to add strategic plan. I'm also going to add officer vote. That would be within the 30 days. I could, I don't, all right, I'll think about that. We're going to add the strategic plan, and I have to figure out when to add the officer vote.
Well, you might consider for budget now.
Maybe, let me think about it. Okay. Now that I remain chair. One of the things, first of all, let me just close with one other thing before Laura Costin makes her very important motion. Is there anything else on the agenda plan? Ms. Downey?
The one point did we want to add, or I guess it's kind of encompassed on our February 2nd retreat about special ed, about a more comprehensive, we were talking about all the update on the PCG that we talked about with Dr. H.
Right. I mean, it's on there, but we can make
Well,
that a little bit more
that's kind of about,
detailed.
it's not about settlements. Yeah, I guess.
Well, but she has an update on special
okay.
education action plan.
Yeah,
So I think
and
that would
maybe,
really
and
fall-
so maybe
fall
we can
within
pull the strategic, well, I guess the question is we can take strategic plan out of there at some point if we decide we've gotten some progress.
Fair enough. Okay, we can figure that out at the next meeting. Okay. All right, the one thing I'd like to say, since this was an interesting meeting from the top, is I think we're so lucky to have two awesome people put themselves forward. And I had a little thing written for Joe as well. It goes back to my original point that it's about, there's a lot of great leaders on this board, and there's a lot of great talent. And I think we're in an awesome position to have such a thing. So thank you, everybody. And can I get a motion? Ms. Costin, can I get a second? Ms. Hirsch, all in favor of adjourning? That passes 7-0 with Michael Joseph having to go home. Thank you so much for everyone listening. Good night.